All right.
Okay.
Up-to-Date Cinephile. Episode 11. We're in double digits.
Now when someone just does a single clap, I just start talking about movies. It's like a Pavlovian response. Yeah, I just start talking. I just start giving takes.
Let's do it.
It's funny because my wife last night asked me about my take on Spider-Man and immediately started to ignore me. Like, she listened for about 3 seconds. I'm like, you asked. I mean, I don't need to talk about, I talk about this shit all the time. I don't need to talk about it to you if I don't want to.
I had to refrain from talking about the details of Spider-Man, because Katie hasn't seen it. So, so she's got headphones on, so she's in hearing distance, but hopefully we don't...
Well, he does spider shit.
He does Spider-Man.
He's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He does Spider-Man shit. Spoiler.
Yeah. Well,
he's fucking Spider-Man's it up.
This is kind of an interesting thing because I mean there are like death threats like on the internet for people who spoil Spider-Man or Marvel,
okay,
properties because people have such a fealty.
I understand that this is we broadcast. I mean, whatever, we talk about this shit if nobody watched, if nobody cared, and almost nobody does. But yeah, they should have never given us the internet. We fucked that shit up.
It's true.
Like, we can't handle it.
We can't. No,
it's great power comes great responsibility,
and
guys.
We have failed. we have failed on that
the
front.
Spider-Man test on the internet. And like, don't you dare fucking tell me a spoiler. I mean, what's the funny thing is, yes, we're gonna begin. We're talking about Spider-Man and Nightmare Alley. We're gonna begin with spoiler-free review of Spider-Man. I mean, the spoilers of this, I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of it's kind of telegraphed from about a mile away.
It really is. I mean,
isn't the whole marketing of this movie like you're going to see some people from some other
franchises? Yeah, I mean, that's the whole marketing ploy. It's the whole gimmick.
I mean, I guess exactly who and exactly how and exactly what's going on.
If you've seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I don't know if did you see that?
Yes, I like that.
Excellent. Yeah, no, it's an excellent movie. Actually, I think it might be the best Spider-Man movie that's ever been made. I
feel like the one that is always put up of the live-action ones is number two of the notable, of the Tobey Maguire one.
Yeah, it's very good. It is very good.
But I haven't watched it in a long time, so I can't... Like, I know that people generally think of that one as the best, but I guess I'd have to watch it again to have a real strong opinion.
I guess to root us into this conversation, maybe for a spoiler-free. What's your feeling? Do you have a fondness for Spider-Man as like a comic book character?
Yes, I think that. So I was thinking about this a lot, kind of on the macro level, because I think we might go a little bit a different way on this movie.
Might be.
To me, there are two great Marvel stories. Spider-Man and the X-Men. That, to me, is the iconic Marvel stuff. I don't think there's anything better. I don't think there's any character or set. I mean, one, obviously, ensemble, one, an individual. Spider-Man is the guy who... That is the foundation of Marvel Comics, right? Because Marvel Comics comes as a response to DC Comics, right? There are people way more steeped in this history than I am, but...
Certainly.
It's like, so what are Marvel Comics? DC Comics are about these iconic characters that are like gods that walk the earth. They're not like real people, right?
Yeah. It's true.
I mean, Superman. I mean, sometimes literally, right? They're these iconic... They're gods. They're the DC comics are our Greek gods, right?
Yeah.
They're our gods. They have some human characteristics. They're not like the Christian god.
The closest you get to a Marvel interpretation, I know where you're going with this, is Batman. Batman is
yeah,
not
but even
necessarily...
then, Batman is like part of the, insofar as you think the Nolan Batman movies work, and I think they do to some extent, at least the first two. Batman's a straight man. Batman's a cipher. Batman is not an interesting character.
Yeah.
Batman is a straight man for the people who encircle him, right?
Yeah, this is true.
Like Batman is a boring... Like, Catwoman's an interesting character. You can get me on board with that.
Oh, well, that's the villain, the rogues gallery of Batman is what makes it
or even the gray characters. Like, Catwoman's a gray character throughout the Batman saga.
Yes.
But, like, Batman is, like, whatever. Yeah. That's why that portrayal of him works, right? It's just like, he's kind of a nothing. Like, he's just kind of like a dude who kind of cruises around the world so that these other fucking lunatics have someone to respond to.
Yeah.
And do interesting shit with. I mean, fucking, Michael Caine is way more interesting than Batman in those movies. Like, I mean,
I think especially by the second one. The second one,
I mean, he's just not an interesting character.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he's really supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right? But he works as a storytelling vehicle because, you know, the point of, like, archetypal characters, like Greek god-style characters, is that they tap into something mythical, right?
Yeah.
They tap into some sort of mythical notions, right? Like, you think about, like, Batman, like, the sort of dark force of justice, right?
Yeah.
Which we all, regardless of how we feel politically, we all sometimes just, like, wish, like, couldn't someone come in and fuck someone up?
Yeah.
Right? Couldn't
Save
someone
us
come in
from
and
this situation.
yeah, because the system has failed. Couldn't someone step in and kind of make up for that gap? Superman, like, what is the best of us? Like, what is the most, our highest aspiration, right? Things like that. That's DC Comics.
Yeah.
Marvel Comics comes up as a response to that, and you get more, I mean, I'm not going to call them deep characters, but you get characters that are, like, two-dimensional instead of one-dimensional, right?
Yeah.
What's the famous Alan Moore line? Like, oh, yeah, I'm a hero, but I got a bad knee. Right? I got a bad heart, I got a bad knee, right? It's funny. Like, so you get these characters that are, so what are Marvel Comics? Marvel Comics are funnier than DC Comics. They strive to be funny in a way that DC Comics traditionally did.
Definitely lighthearted.
But they're very sentimental, right? They're sentimental.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? That's Marvel Comics. Funny and sentimental. And the character that embodies that is Spider-Man, which is why he is the best character, I would argue. I mean, like I said, I have a soft spot for the X-Men too. I think
me too.
Because I think that it's no surprise that they have generated some of the better superhero movies, right? Because I mean, it's funny, right? This is like the industry snapshot, and who really cares? I guess I don't really know where the X-Men are in terms of what they're going to do with them. Sony has just, I guess, what Sony and Disney just cut a deal, right? Where it's like, you keep I mean, basically, like, Disney got everything except the best parts of Marvel, right? Which is why they had to sort of comb over the scrap heap for characters like Iron Man and Doctor Strange, who nobody gives a shit about, or nobody did before these movies.
Yeah, exactly. It's because of what you're talking about. It's because Spider-Man was made into a franchise before. I mean, twice over by Sony.
People, I guess whenever that stuff got sold for parts, like basically Marvel's movie rights got sort of sold for parts at a time where people, I guess, weren't prescient enough to know that these things would eventually be worth just, I don't even know what the market value is of all of Marvel if it came as one package.
Well, it's fascinating because
I mean, Lucas sold Star Wars for what, $5 billion to Disney.
Yeah,
Marvel's probably worth more than that at this point. Was it worth $10 billion? Yeah. I can't even say.
Well, I mean, even
it's some insane amount of money, right?
The first couple movies in the MCU were, even though it was Marvel Studios, it was Kevin Feige, like, linking up. I think Paramount released the first.
I mean, the rights were all kind of scattered around, right? And so the crown jewels, Spider-Man and the X-Men, were other places, and remain other places on some level.
Yeah,
and this has all kinds of ramifications. But I guess Sony just decided to get with the program, and whatever money had to change hands, and now they kind of do a little. It's like the second Tom Holland Spider-Man movie where they go to like a cultural exchange. They go to Europe or whatever. Yeah. It's like they do a little cultural exchange in each other's shared universe. Well, I guess, I was about to do a spoiler. No spoilers. So whatever. I think this background overview stuff is interesting, because I think it sort of sets the context for, like, what is or isn't good about some of these movies. Yeah. So here's my top line takeaway for Spider-Man: Far From Home, No Way Home, Not at Home,
Homecoming, Far From Home, No Way Home.
These names are too close, and I can't remember which is which. So that's a criticism. So what are the criticisms? It's too long. They're all too long. Every superhero movie now is too long. Please make them shorter. Please do not clear 2 hours.
I don't know. I don't know if you feel this way. I think and this might be right along with the criticism. I think it's too long and underwritten.
Let's talk about the underwritten thing in a minute, because that's interesting. I'll have to think about that.
I think there's a lot in it, but I don't think they explore any of those things very well.
It's too long. I guess I would say underwritten in the sense that, like, a lot of it just doesn't make sense. Although I'm more okay with that. I wish that superhero movies were just fine with not making sense.
Sure.
Like the whole, like, this, a lot of aspects of this movie don't make sense, or they're kind of weird, or you wonder why things happen as they do.
Things have to make sense, I think, for character decisions, some of which are questionable, but we'll get into that.
That's true. That's true. It, of course, I mean, you know, there are action sequences that are bloated, right? And that go on for too long. I don't need that. Although there were some action sequences that I liked, which was good.
They're few and far between, I think, in this movie.
I mean, I liked. Well, see, this is the thing. What are we going to spoil? Like, I liked some of them. I didn't like others of them. I thought, but the thing is, so here's what I'll say about this movie, though. I liked this movie because I think that it understands what could be entertaining about a movie like this. And the thing that Marvel wants to do in every movie now, which is have, like, funny jokes.
It's just quips. It's quip banter.
But it works for Spider-Man, in my estimation.
It can.
It works for Spider-Man. It's tonally appropriate for Spider-Man.
It is tonally appropriate.
It makes sense for Spider-Man in a way that, like, it doesn't make sense in Eternals. In Eternals, it's like so just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And in a lot of these movies, it doesn't work, right? So here's what I'll say. In spite of all the issues that you're going to raise, which are all correct, or some of them are correct, I'm not going to say all of your issues are correct. I enjoyed this movie. Okay. Now, I saw what you said about West Side Story, but I feel like that's, like Kyle said, I'll go see West Side Story before I go see Spider-Man again. Of course. But to me, that's just praising with faint dams. I can mention a lot of movies that I like more than this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that I'll ever see this movie again, but I will say that this particular trilogy now of Spider-Man movies, I have enjoyed. Sure. I've enjoyed each one of them. I've found them entertaining. I've found them funny. I think Tom Holland is the best of the Spider-Man as a portrayal.
Yeah.
I like Zendaya a lot. Yeah. I think she's a very, you know, the three of them and his friend Ned, they work as a kind of little unit. It captures
little team that is enjoyable and charming. Yeah.
Yeah, they even make a joke. You know, I think the Scooby-Doo joke is in the trailer, so we can. There's no spoiler there. Doctor Strange tells him to Scooby-Doo up an answer. I think that we end up getting so frustrated and angry at these movies because there's too many superhero movies. It's a hegemonic within the world of spectacle cinema, basically. Should you see West Side Story over this? Of course. West Side Story, the new one, the Spielberg one, is a borderline great movie. Like, that's my only question about it. Is it great or really, really good?
Yeah. It's
good. I would rate this movie as good. I think it's entertaining, and I think if it didn't exist in a landscape of, like, hegemonic superhero movies where you're like, just give us any fucking other thing in the world, I think we would watch it and just say, oh, this is fun. This is a fun, entertaining movie. And that's all I want from these movies. I want them to be fun, entertaining. I want them to recognize what is potentially enjoyable or entertaining or pleasurable about this kind of a movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Which is the difference between this movie, which at least for me was entertaining and pleasurable for its faults. And we keep coming back to Eternals, but I could say the same about the Ghostbusters movie. I could say the same about most of the new Star Wars movies. They don't understand what even would be just entertaining about them. Yeah. Right? Forget about good. Forget about transcendent or cinematically rewarding. They don't understand what would be enjoyable about watching a movie like this. And this movie, I think, understands and executes on what is potentially enjoyable about a Spider-Man movie. So I've filibustered.
No, that's fine.
Because you're going to come with your negative talk.
I think there's it's not purely negative. See, that's the thing. I'm approaching Spider-Man No Way Home in a multifaceted kind of pronged approach because there's a lot like it is.
You took a scissor attack.
Yeah, it's a scissor attack. Like because there's so many elements that combine in No Way Home. This is a Tom Holland franchise. It also, I don't think it's spoiler to say that it invites a lot of other of the Spider-Man incarnations and franchises as well, because that's in the market.
And the other Marvel Universe properties that are forthcoming.
And so it's a weird embodiment of Spider-Man in the full, total pop cultural cinema sense, which is There's a lot going on in this movie.
Yes, I mean it's. I think it's fair to say that this movie is sort of a complete. What I want to. I always want to see meditation because that's so like that's so fascist.
I wish it were that. I wish it were.
Well,
that.
let's say it's a reflection or a looking at Spider-Man as like the idea of what is Spider-Man, who is Spider-Man, what is the quintessence of of Peter Parker / Spider-Man.
So this is the thing. Tom Holland, I think I will agree with you, though, when we get into some spoiler conversation. I will have some things to say about Tom Holland Spider-Man versus some other Spider-Mans in the other Peters Parker in this.
It's like Attorneys General.
Yeah, the Attorneys General. You know, when we get into some of the details and some of the comparisons, because I think they are invited and welcome in this conversation, especially with this form. See, I like this trilogy. I will say that out front. I do like this. I do like Tom Holland as Peter Parker. I do like him as Spider-Man. He's a little too, immature at times. But then again, he is in high school, and I do like that they have rooted it in that origin story, and that he makes childish decisions. And honestly, you wouldn't you? Like, it's believable that somebody, a teenager, an adolescent with these kinds of powers, would make some questionable decisions.
Yeah. No, I think that he. Yes, I think that one of the smart decisions is to keep him. He's young, at least in theory. He doesn't look like a lot of 17-year-olds, but But whatever. We've suspended our disbelief about that. Like. A million times.
I mean,
CEG, The Breakfast
Club. He was 21
Club.
when he started the role, and now he looks a little more not.
He's been held back a few times. Let's just say him and his friends have had some trouble, meeting their graduation requirements.
And I mean, they need a path forward, and that's what the movie is about, isn't it? But
just like all of us, so too with us all.
I do have to say, in this quip manner that has, I think, plagued the Marvel Universe in tone. I think Guardians of the Galaxy started it, and everyone has since then tried to embody that sort of onslaught of one-liners, just lines that just zip by, and then they don't allow it to sit. But it works in Spider-Man because he's a quippy hero. Like, that's what has embodied. I think Andrew Garfield got that very correct.
It definitely needs like more extended bits though. Like I really like the opening sequence, which is kind of just a oneer, and it's more of like an extended kind of humorous kinetic bit, which is more enjoyable than like these lines that just kind of come and go. But there are whole conversations that are like a lot of the conversations that were funny worked for me as kind of humorous and entertaining.
Well, so this is where I'm building up, because I think Homecoming is the best film that Tom Holland has been in. I think the villain, I think Michael Keaton is snarling and menacing without the uniform.
He is definitely like a great villain. Like a great. I mean, I love Michael Keaton in general. I think he's a great actor and kind of gives you something that not a lot of people give you.
And he's able to.
He's great.
And he orients, and he knows what he was Batman. Like, he knows what these ideas come from. He kind of originated them.
He's mined this territory before.
And so I love that. There's a meta contextual aspect to it, even beyond like Birdman. Like, it has just an orientation of him understanding, and he is great as the Vulture, which is a kind of a B villain in the Spider-Man universe, and I thought he did a great job. And then you build to Far From Home, and I actually thought Jake Gyllenhaal was a really interesting form of Mysterio. The twist in the middle sort of is obvious if you know the villain, and I thought he played it very, very well. It at the end of the movie, it gets a little overdone CGI wise and action wise, but I thought villain wise,
they always go to that place, which is part of what sucks about these movies.
Well, like, and this one as well.
I mean, if you consider us telling you that there's gonna be like a big action sequence near the end of the movie, well, then I guess you think everything's a spoiler. Because if you didn't see one of those, you'd fall out of your chair. Yeah. Right? And it's like, I don't know why that has to be the case.
Yeah, I don't either.
You know, like action sequences in these movies for me should be like espresso.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sound like Dino De Laurentiis. I'm gonna sound like an Italian producer, right? Espresso. Like, I make them great, but make them quick.
Yeah.
Like, make them quick.
But
unless it's a kung fu movie and the whole point is just to watch people fight.
But see, that's the thing. Modern day audiences, they don't want the espresso because once they have it, they'll spit it out like in Mulholland Drive.
I'm so sorry.
They just
still, oh my god, I love that scene so much. Thank you for reminding me of that. That'll make me happy for the next hour. It just came
to my mind because
that's the greatest coffee scene I think in modern cinema.
Yeah.
You know, we could get a debate going about that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's gonna be season 33 of
coffee movies.
Of I Know Movies You Don't. At that point, you'll be out of movies. We'll just be like scene analysis, like the greatest coffee scenes.
The greatest coffee scenes of all time. That would be an interesting take.
For an entire season. Like a listicle.
But so what are my feelings ultimately on No Way Home? And I think in the context of let's orient us in the Tom Holland franchise and how that sits, rather than compare it to some other, because I really do like Tobey Maguire. I like his movies. Except for the Spider-Man 3. I think that's obvious. But I really do like Spider-Man 1 and 2.
The first two, you know.
Yeah, Sam Raimi has an understanding of the silliness of superhero movies, the camp kitsch that it is, and he really leaned heavy into it. And I actually think kitsch, over time, ages wonderfully. And,
in a way, this movie might be an illustration of that exact point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you get into Andrew Garfield, and I think Andrew Garfield works very well.
Can I make
movies.
A confession?
Yeah.
I didn't see any of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man.
That's perfectly fine.
I know it's fine, but it's just, I guess they just fell at a moment where I was just completely disengaged. From like that particular strain of cinema.
Well, I mean, it was,
because I like Andrew Garfield. I think that I think that, you know, we talked about Tick, Tick, Boom. I love that movie.
Yeah, he's great in that. No,
he's clearly a talented dude.
He's a talented dude. He works when they cast him right. He works very well. Him as Peter Parker's a weird interpretation. It's kind of like an emo, whiny, annoying kind of version.
Yeah.
But his quippy Spider-Man when he's in the suit works very, very well.
I think Garfield is an interesting case, because I think at the end of the day, maybe he's going to be like a great character actor, right? Yeah. Like, but is he like?
Is he leading man?
Well, not even is he a leading man, but like, I just feel like, there was a time where he was like an it girl, you know, and like
he was.
Some people, you know, the people have different strengths. Like I think that, like I said, I go back to Tick, Tick, Boom. Like he's pitch perfect in that role, and that's a leading role, but it's in a small movie, and it's a very particular role, right? As opposed to like, I don't know, like, I mean. Like what's the iconic like prime Tom Cruise or something, who's like the iconic person who's like, oh, that guy, he's a hero doing hero shit.
Yeah,
like it's not. I don't know that Andrew Garfield is that guy, and I don't think that's any sort of knock on him, right?
Not at all. But so what I'm trying to get is I'm trying to just organize my thoughts on Tom Holland. This is a trilogy. Where does this go? I think the trajectory of Tom Holland's movies have gone down. And I think this is the worst of the three. Why that is because I think the origin of Homecoming, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, a grounded, real story about real stakes for this hero, for high school, for whatever this is oriented in kind of a realistic interpretation of that universe. The stakes seem... It's like Ant-Man versus Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor. Like, you know, Spider-Man is in you know, this universe of ours, and he's helping the city. He's not helping the universe.
Yes.
And so I like that orientation. I like that grounded aspect of Spider-Man. And in fact, Homecoming works best for me because I'm like, here it is. This is what it's supposed to have, that feeling. And unfortunately, once you introduce Spider-Man into the world of the Avengers, and he has...
every 10 minutes in the MCU, something
a cataclysmic
something
event.
cataclysmic is happening.
And he has nanobite technology and these advanced suits, and I like those aspects. I like seeing the invention of that and the expansion of that. I mean, I play the video games, and they're fun. Like, they're fun when you get...
The Sony ones?
Yeah, the Sony
ones are... I mean, those could be a better Spider-Man iteration than...
Talk about that PS4 game, and I haven't done the Miles Morales PS5, but yeah, I think it would be...
I think that, like, those video... I mean, this is interesting, because we're getting into sort of Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message territory, right? But, like, yes, I like those video games a lot, and I think if Spider-Man is a source of joy for you, then yes, just slinging webs across Manhattan is a pretty fun bit of audio-visual entertainment.
Absolutely,
to give yourself,
absolutely.
Right.
So with this, now we're getting into and the introduction of this, and obviously the form, the pro forma of what's being introduced in the cataclysmic event within this movie. Which is in the trailers. I mean, it is about, trying to undo some things, not in time, but of, fracturing the universe. And it has consequences.
Yeah. He wants one thing to happen, some other
things happen.
I mean, whatever. This is... Yeah, I mean... But see, here's...
really what it is, and then I'll let you go. It's this universal gobbledygook that, it doesn't necessarily really make sense in some character form.
Oh, yeah, no, the macro story stuff doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, and I'll let you go. I'm just trying to, say, I'm not totally negative on this movie. Some of the emotional highs really work.
Yeah.
Some of the humor doesn't work as much for me, and I'll talk about that when we get into some details on scenes, but not all, and mostly it's because of how we orient the story. In the first hour of this movie, I was incredibly annoyed and bored because they decided to wipe away the consequence from the second movie, and it annoyed me. They were like, we have other things to do, so we're not going to address what happened in this, and we're going to explain it away cheaply. And so that annoyed me. But once we got into what they wanted to get to, which comes about an hour plus in, once the kind of things start taking shape, I found myself to be engaged. I found myself to enjoy that action set piece in the middle. It gets a little muddy at the end. And honestly, it is sort of a fan service gimmickry.
Oh god,
movie.
See, this is a problem. We should have a trigger warning whenever you say fan service because I throw up in my mouth.
Yeah.
A little bit. And at some point, I'm just gonna yak on your couch.
Yeah.
If you say it the wrong way, I fucking hate. Like, I'm a fan. Like, I was raised on fucking Ghostbusters and this shit.
Yeah.
I was a fan. I fucking hate fan service. Like, it's like literally like. I am a child. It's like, I am a child, and I want you, like a mother bird, Kevin Feige. Come to me, Kathleen Kennedy. I want you to chew up content. I want you to spit it into my mouth.
That's what it is.
Because I can't handle anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, here's the problem, right? This is my last macro point, and then we can get into spoilers.
Yeah.
Comic books are serials.
Yes.
Comic books are serials.
Yeah.
So... you have this desire. You have these conflicting desires, right? This is at the core of the problem with the Marvel project. And I think we're starting to see how they're going to unwind it because they're going to go more to TV, which makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because comic book stories are serial stories. Yes, Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man, the iconic Spider-Man of, initial Marvel glory. Yes, Uncle Ben dies. Very... catastrophic event, right?
Yeah.
That defines the character. But then, how many amazing issues of Amazing Spider-Man? How many issues are we in? Thousands, right? And they keep rebooting it and changing it. But, you can't... I mean, what you have in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is just this endless cycle of just catastrophic events.
Yeah.
Right? I've joked about it before, but it really is... the core question for anybody who grew up watching Buffy is, why do people still live in this town? Mm-hmm. Why do people still live on planet Earth? Like, get out if you can. Elon Musk, you're right? Let's get Man of the Year, Elon Musk, come on the pod. Like, you're right. We got to get off this planet because every 2 years, like, something just catastrophic is happening. And at some point, you lose. Like, where do you escalate after Thanos. Where do you escalate after Galactus comes and try to eat your planet? Like,
I mean, that's where they're building to is Galactus.
Well, of course, yes, of course, because where else do you go?
Yeah.
Where else do you go? Like, we can't raise the stakes anymore. I'm sorry, guys. Like, you can't do it. So where do you go? You go someplace else, right? You go someplace else.
Yeah.
So you go to more inside characters. You go to more serial drama. I'm just saying that it's, Marx had it all figured out. Groucho Marx to some extent, and also Karl Marx. The contradictions eventually turn on themselves, right?
Yeah.
The contradiction of the capitalist project of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that you have to keep escalating the tension. Well, you have no place else to go. So, I mean, it's not satisfactory anymore, and it becomes cartoonish and a joke. Like, oh, what? They're going to destroy the planet again?
Yeah.
Right? Everything's going to go wrong again? I mean, where do you go after that? I mean, like I said, I think they sort of realize it. So I think we're going to have this kind of interregnum before they ramp up to the next huge crossover event where they have to defeat Galactus or whatever, where there's going to be a lot of TV shows, a lot of kind of smaller bore stuff, which makes sense because it's like you can't just keep on doing the same shit over and over again, but there's still that desire, like we got to ratchet up, we got to ratchet up, we got to ratchet up.
Yeah.
I will say we gotta keep dragging people to the next thing.
And I will say, in consideration of that comment, even though that is because in this movie there's no real the villain is the event. The event is the villain, and that's where the challenge and the antagonism comes in, and the challenge to our hero. What I will say is, if you are going to escalate, if you are going to do things, this would be a better version of it because it does have to do with him as a character and how he deals with it. The internal struggle.
It does benefit from being like endogenous to the story, right? Like it's not just like, oh yeah, something terrible is coming,
and we have to save it.
It's like, oh, I created this problem and now I gotta solve it.
Now you gotta solve it.
Okay, so let's should we do spoilers?
Let's
now?
Get into spoilers because that's
spoilers.
Turn
it off. Don't come at us, internet. We can't.
We can't survive it.
I'm emotionally very fragile.
Yeah, we're also too small
and you are
to handle it.
You are too. Okay, spoilers.
Let's get into spoilers. So, essentially, these are where my initial complaints come in, and maybe you'll have some things to say about the opening.
Oh, I'm sure I'll think of something.
You'll think of something, but you said you liked the opening, and there is a sequence that you pointed out that you talked vaguely about, but it is when he and MJ are on the kind of the run from the media, like they're being hounded by helicopters, and he finds himself in sort of an indie drama, rom-com, awkward sex movie where he's getting out of his suit and like it is going through the house kind of thing.
But also, like, I also want to say this: no movie with a character named Happy Hogan should take itself too seriously.
No, it really.
I mean, like,
so this is what I'm. It's interesting because a lot of the jokes in the first hour weren't landing for me. Why? I don't think it was because of the quality of the riffage. I don't think it was the quality of what was happening. It was moving very fast, which this movie had to. For even 2.5 hours, they needed to get to a place. They needed to get to a place where things needed to go on, and there's a lot going on. So because of that, I was weirdly annoyed by this whole thing. The dynamic is what's set. It starts right off the bat from Far From Home. Mysterio is dead. He's doxed Spider-Man. He's doxed Spider-Man.
The dox.
And he also has declared that Spider-Man killed him, and that it's a public, whether it's illusion or not, a murder. Like,
also, by the way, how do we feel about J. Jonah Jameson as Alex Jones?
He's great. He's great.
But I mean, it's a
great interpretation.
They've totally shifted him to being Alex Jones.
He absolutely is,
except way more popular because his face is on the fucking Times Square jumbotrons or whatever. He is Alex what Alex Jones wants to be.
Absolutely. No, yeah, he is right there in the public consciousness. He's very popular. So this
we love J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh yeah, J.K. You couldn't do any other actor to play
role
J.
for
Jonah
life.
Jameson.
That's a role for life type situation.
Absolutely. He's even in the video games. Like that's the thing.
Yeah, no, you can't.
It's fantastic.
He's Yeah, he's the guy.
He might be one of, like, when you talk about people who've performed a character to such perfection that nobody else could ever play them again.
I would not want to be the next J. Jonah Jameson.
No, he's up there. I mean,
that's
fantastic.
That's like getting to coach a basketball team after Phil Jackson. Like, you just know you're fucked, right?
It's really true.
It's it's a fucked situation.
So this is the thing. He's murdered Mysterio to like on video. Like, you know, there is evidence of him performing this, and whether or not it's true or not, we know as the audience it's not true. But there's a question in the air.
Yes.
And they explain this away in the first 20 minutes by just getting a lawyer and changing apartments. Like, he's just like, don't worry about it. The charges won't stick.
That is a total. I was just talking about. I like the opening sequence. Not the first part of the movie. I just like that one where they go through the house and happy and Aunt May is breaking.
That, yeah.
Like, I enjoyed that. I thought that was funny. But yes, then the whole thing where, I mean, they literally do it. You know, it's funny. One of the bigger whoops in our crowd. I will say this: I did like being in that theater full of people that some of whom were into it.
Yeah.
I miss being in theaters where people hoot and holler a little bit.
Hoot and holler.
But one of the biggest hoots and hollers came for the very brief appearance of Daredevil.
Matt Murdock.
Who has one scene where he does some cool shit where he catches a brick. But
that was one of those fan service things,
yes,
or like illusions that worked really well.
Yeah, no, but like if you want to put a little seed in there for that, sure, that's fun. That's funny. That doesn't take anything away, and it isn't like some of this shit is like, it's like they want to throw up a flashing neon sign and be like, look, we're doing something fun for the fans. Like, that was just a nice little tidbit. It certainly didn't bother me. I thought it was funny, but like, that sequence should go. Like, when you talk about something that should go, like just the whole thing where they arrest him and they're like gonna do something to him, but then they just don't, and yeah, that just kind of evaporates into the ether.
But see, that's my problem.
Get rid of it. Get rid of it.
It's either you get rid of it or you lean into it.
Or that's the movie.
Or you lean into it, and he's like, well, and it becomes sort of a selfish decision as well. Maybe he's disguising it as doing something for his friends, because, you know, Spider-Man Peter Parker has to do something for other people. He keeps saying that. He's like, no, I'm doing it for my friends. They need to get into college. It doesn't matter what happens to me. I need my friends to get into college.
Yeah, but the problem is deeper, though, right? Because it's not so much what he does or why he does it, right? He tries to get his memory erased, the memory of him erased from everyone but his close friends, and the spell goes wrong, blah, 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 blah.
Well, it goes wrong because he keeps adding complications.
Shit. Who really cares? Doesn't matter. They open a hole in the fucking multiverse, and everyone starts coming throwing it. Who knows Peter Parker, blah, 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 blah. But the problem is that, like, that whole thing just disappears, even though the spell doesn't work. Like, they set it up. Here's what happens with these movies, I'm convinced, is they make a thing that looks good, and then they get to the next thing, and it doesn't work, but they're stuck with it.
Yeah.
Which is why they always reboot these shits.
Yeah.
Because it's just not... It's like, oh, that was cool then. And, I mean, the movie... The number 2 ends on a... I mean, it's clearly meant to be a trilogy. It's clearly an Empire Strikes Back ending. Like, that's the next movie. Everyone knows who Peter Parker is.
Yeah.
But all it is a reason to get him to do this spell... which fucks up, and then starts this whole other series of problems, and then the old problem goes away.
Yeah.
As if it's just alluded to in the first 20, 30 minutes of the movie. Like, oh yeah, some people think this dude's a murderer.
Yeah.
That should by the way, they blew up. What did they blow up? A freaking Tower Bridge. Like, I mean, come on. Like,
that should be a more interesting plotline. That even if proven right in court, the divisiveness, the conspiracy theory aspect, they have a quick visual where there's a division at the school of people who hate him, people who support him. That should be a more daunting
by the way,
aspect of this film.
If I could vote a series. Now I've got some pitches. Okay, Disney, Marvel, are you listening? My Star Wars extended series, Dr. Evazan Padababa, called Wanted Men. Great idea.
Great idea.
Fucking everyone watch the shit out of that series.
We're wanted men.
We're wanted men. We're wanted men. Just do a fucking... That's like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead of Star Wars.
Great.
Just plug those guys through the... I mean...
Buddy Road space movie.
Those guys just going around doing like fucking bootleg surgeries or whatever it is they do. Tell me you wouldn't watch that the fucking day it dropped.
Hands down, greatest idea I've heard
so
of.
For the Spider-Man, I really want a movie about those three guys: Hannibal Buress, J.B. Smoove, and
Martin Starr. Yeah,
yeah. And I saw those guys. I was like, oh, I hope these guys are in the movie. And of course, they're not.
They're one scene.
They get one scene. Basically, you get J.B. who's like the principal, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the big fan of Spider-Man, played by Martin Starr, and the Mysterio fan, played by Hannibal Buress, who I think is one of the funniest people alive. Like I love
his style is very unique.
I love the shit out of Hannibal Buress. He's kind of the modern remix of like Mitch Hedberg or something. Like he has that kind of weird deadpan, somewhat absurdist, but I love the shit out of Hannibal Buress. But like I would watch a show about those guys like running that fucking school.
Well,
like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern dead of their school.
But also like
those guys, I watched that.
The dynamics and disagreement in that scene are more interesting than some of the other giant universal cataclysmic events that happen. You're like that division of like you're a murderer, Spider-Man, versus like, and it's played as a joke.
Mysterio was right.
Mysterio was right. Yeah, no, but that division played as a joke, I think, gets to a real heart of what would be more interesting in the dynamic of a neighborhood Spider-Man and the feelings on the ground.
Because their instinct, which is wrong, is to always go big.
Yeah. And
that's what they do. They go, the fucking multiverse is going to break apart unless we mind fuck the entire multiverse.
Which, let's get into that. Because
why does that have to be the stakes every time?
Well, and it's the stake. And what's interesting is that Spider-Man, who is supposed to be very intelligent, and I get that he's making an impulsive decision. He is still a kid, but he's older now. He's fought the Avengers. He's blipped. Like, he disappeared for 5 years. He also is he's had his adventures, and yet his decision and what he comes to his mind is that I'm going to ask Doctor Strange to undo an aspect of the universe. One, I don't think Spider-Man actually would make this decision. I don't think this Spider-Man makes this decision. I don't find it credible. I don't find it believable. I also have a hard time, even though Doctor Strange is arrogant, and the arrogancy is where he can.
Yeah, this is a mistake. What you're going to
he's cynical. He's slightly arrogant, but he's more cynical than the character is portrayed as in this variation. And while I love Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, I feel like they are reinterpreting the character to benefit a storyline they've concocted to open the universe rather than explain it with these characters. And so the whole basis of this film, I don't like.
Yes, I agree with you. That part doesn't work. The fact that he's just like, fuck it, we'll mind fuck everyone.
Well, and then he's like,
because literally that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna fucking reach into everyone's mind so they completely. I mean, what's funny is the thing that he initially proposes. And this is what doesn't work at a macro level about what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is that the thing he initially proposes is like no big deal is the thing that at the end is the great tragedy of the movie.
Which is weird. Yeah.
Yeah, like so basically he starts casually to do the thing. Because the movie has twin tragedies, right? Aunt May dies, which is the personal tragedy. And then
which works.
But works. Of course. You're going to hit that note,
Even though I think Marissa Tomei has been underutilized through the trilogy,
we love you, Marissa Tomei. We love you, Marissa Tomei.
I do think that works.
You are so hot.
Yes.
You are so hot, and you're awesome, and you're a great Aunt May. And yes, you should have been used way more, of course. Great actor. Just great actor. No arguing about that. But then, so like the thing that is suggested casually as the solution in Act 1 becomes the movie's ultimate tragedy in Act 3, which is that he is forgotten.
Yeah.
By the people that he loves.
Yeah.
And he tries to, like the whole thing is, yes, he fucks up the spell by saying, oh, but we need this person to remember me. I need this person. Oh, what about Aunt May? Oh, what about this? And that fucks it up. And so we get the fucked up spell. But it's like, it's like, the point is, like, yes, guess what? Superhero movies are somewhat fascist and have fucked up ethics, right? Big surprise.
Yeah.
Right? So the ethical dilemma is, I'm going to mind fuck the multiverse, which is what you're doing. You're, like, fucking with the memories of every being across every dimension so that I don't have to kill the Green Goblin and Doc Ock and those Andrew Garfield villains who I don't
Electro
know.
and well, actually, yeah. Oh, and Lizard, Lizard, Dr. Connors.
Yeah. I like it how they made the Lizard kind of sexy, right? He was the horniest character in the thing. Like you could just tell he wanted to fuck another lizard person. That's why he wanted to make more lizard people.
Is it Rhys Ifans? I forget. I think it's Rhys Ifans who plays.
Whatever. He's a horny lizard.
Yeah.
He's got horny energy, but they don't let him go anywhere with it, which I think is a mistake.
It's Rhys Ifans who plays.
But I mean, like, so you have this confused ethics, right? About how. It's like I won't be utilitarian in this way, but I'll be utilitarian in this other weird fucking way, crazier way. Right?
Yeah.
Like I'll fuck the brains of the entire universe, but I'm not gonna send the Green Goblin back to meet his fate.
Yeah.
Right. But all that's fucking stupid. I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of things that don't work.
Yeah.
But what I do think is interesting, right? And the movie seems to sort of wink at this. The difference between the Spider-Man movies that were and the Spider-Man movies that are is like, give me fucking Willem Dafoe and who plays Doc Ock?
Alfred Molina.
Alfred Molina. Yeah. Like, just such a pleasure to watch these guys just chew up the fucking scenery, right? Which is like, this is comic books, motherfucker.
Yeah. Okay, so
this is comic books.
Let's get into the positive, because I think Willem Dafoe is the MVP of this movie.
Oh God, yeah. Well, one of the great actors of our time.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Right? Just a fucking genius, and he gets it, and he does that shit again. But it feels like but this goes just to the heart of like the MCU movies. Probably like it's quippy. But it's also trying to be more naturalistic than those older movies, right? Like, it's trying to give us realer characters, right?
Yeah.
At least if somewhere on the continuum between, like, the gritty realism of Nolan and, like, the cartoonishness of, like, older superhero movies, like those Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, or the Tim Burton Batman movies, right? Marvel's going for something, like, more naturalistic, but it's over the backdrop of this fucking insanity of, like, the world's gonna end every 5 minutes. It's so mixed up, and like it doesn't have, and that's why like the project doesn't work, which is what they've made it into, is this huge cinematic universe project. That shit doesn't work for me as a kind of storytelling project, because like I said, the medium is the message. Movies, you want them to be big, but if you're going to tell a long story, well, you can't. It's like if I wrote a novel and every chapter was the end of the world, right? It would be absurdist, right? You would read that. If I wrote a novel where at the end of every chapter, like the world was about to end and it was averted, you would read that as an absurdist novel.
Yes.
You would not read that as like a naturalistic novel, or like as a novel trying to, like, I would be making some sort of weird commentary, or doing, like, I could write a Marvel MCU novel where at the end of every chapter the universe is about to end and someone barely averts it. It doesn't. I mean, at some point, like, your emotionality is just it's gonna like taper down, right? Because you're like, the stakes don't mean anything to me.
No. You're right, and that's why I had like a refreshing response to even one of the more mediocre Marvel movies was Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I was like, at least it's not a cataclysmic event. At least it's personal. At least it's this grounded story.
You get to see Paul Rudd do his dumb, funny guy thing.
Well, and I feel like that's what's happening, is that we're losing the charm and personality and love that we have for these characters, because they assume we love them in the first place, and so they don't have to put any work into their growth.
Pre-sold franchise, baby.
I know, yeah, exactly. And so it's all about the event. The event is the villain, and what I will say is what they do with Willem Dafoe works in a large sense, although I wanted more of him. I wanted more of the philosophy of this villain, more of why does he want to make Peter Parker's life hell? Is essentially, he just wants to kill people around him and be like, I want to watch you suffer. And while that works for the context of his dynamic in the Sam Raimi movies, because he's going mad, it's kind of a personal vendetta. He has this fascination, allure, and respect for Spider-Man, and so the Green Goblin is the version of him that is envious or wants to put this version down because the real Norman Osborn has respect for him. So the Green Goblin is like, we snuff out that. That's competition. That's somebody who can challenge us.
It's the sort of you're weak.
Yeah.
Right? It's the it's like his sort of fucked up notion of like we're gods, right? You're weak because you won't use your power.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, basically, it's just a more fucked up riff on Lex Luthor, right?
Yeah.
That's the Lex Luthor character. Like,
exactly.
why would we bow down? Or the Magneto character on some level, right? Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, we're better. Like, we're better.
Better.
Why would we deal with this shit? Like, these people are to us. And there's a political element to that's interesting, right? Because the masters of our actual universe do treat us normal people that way, right?
That's true. Very true.
We're just pawns, right? So yeah, but that's the thing is this movie has this movie just basically, it's as if it took like a bunch of different ethical ideas and just kind of throws them in the air.
Well,
they don't none of them pay off in it. Yeah. I mean, it's interest like, yes, it's a classic ethical problem that like. You'll do all this sort of large-scale utilitarian stuff, but if I tell you to press a button to kill a person and save the world, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Which is basically what this is. Press a button, kill these people, save the planet.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do it, and that's reasonable. Like, that's an actual ethical dilemma, but it's in this morass of, like, so many other things.
Yeah, and they're not really it's not really a weight of what that decision is. Instead, it's very superficial. Just because Aunt May has this idea of we need to help people. And yeah, that's a general
I don't even have a problem with that, but
no,
but if the counterweight to that is mindfuck the multiverse, I mean, I might kill those people. Like that's the violation is huge. And the movie doesn't seem to really grapple with that. Like, I'm going to reach into the brain of every being across every dimension and fuck with their mind.
And that's ultimately
fucked up.
That's ultimately what's so interesting is because they treat Doctor Strange as he's like, this is what the stakes are. We press this button, they die. And we don't mess with the multiverse, which is a thing that we know little about.
We don't cross the streams.
We don't cross the streams. We don't do that. And then they treat Doctor Strange as though he's the one who has a moral, this pragmatism or utilitarianism that is cold. It's almost Bentham utilitarianism. It's cold. It's callous. And so with Spider-Man, they treat it as like, no, we need to save this. We need to save these people. We need to cure them. And that is a more moralistic sort of approach to that is counterintuitive, that counters the large scale question that helping one. I mean, it's on Aunt May's gravestone. Help one, you help everyone.
Yes.
But in the end, they have to mess with the entire scope of the multiverse anyway.
So here's what I would say then. I actually like, and I think it works for the character and works for the movie, this idea that we're going to cure these villains. Yeah. I like that. I think that's a smart decision.
I like where it was going.
What we don't need is this ballast on the other end of, like, the multiverse is going to fall apart and, it is crossing the streams, all life as we know it, right? Yeah. Like, but that's a joke, and this is, like, every time, like, create something else as weight on the other end, and that makes the movie better.
Yeah.
We don't always have to implicate the destruction of every being across every dimension across the entire universe as like the thing we're trying to avoid, because at that point, which once again, that's just Eternals, this is the same shit, this is life everywhere for this one sacrifice, like Jesus Christ, like how many times do we have to go to this well? Like, there's a million ways you could set the stakes, but that's always it, because like I said, they're desensitized. Right, it's like it's just the stake. We're so desensitized to the stakes because they just keep on raising them, and they can't raise them any further. So it's just like, well, what's another way we can articulate the universe being destroyed? Well, now it's because there's tears in the multiverse, right? It's just like they have like a candy bowl full of like different ways that you could destroy the universe, and they're just gonna draw from it. To pick the next one. It's like that's just. I mean, isn't like destroying New York City enough? Like that's pretty terrible, right?
I will say this.
Something else.
What you're saying is ultimately the macro thing that's happening in this movie doesn't matter, because if you just focused on the micro, on what this means for Spider-Man, that he chooses to help these people, and then there are consequences to helping these people, and ultimately it leads to him almost on the edge of being bitter and killing Green Goblin. I mean, he basically raises up the glider to do so, and the other Spider-Man steps in to save his soul. It's a very Uncle Ben moment. I actually thought it betrayed the entire notion of the action by letting Tobey Maguire live. Because he should have died in a sort of Uncle Ben fashion. It's like, I'm saving your soul. I'm not going to let you kill this person. I'm not even sure
why they didn't let him die.
I don't know.
Like, he's not coming back to do this again.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Maybe he is. Fuck, I don't know.
But ultimately,
maybe they're going to do like a 3. Like, see, but that's funny. Like, if it was just the 3 of them like tearing around being ridiculous, I'm here for that movie.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like do some. That's the thing is like I said, like, ultimately, I guess I'm undermining my original point, but I still maintain that, like, and in the end is poignant, right? And the truth is, the only people that it matters that they forget is his friends.
Yes.
Nobody else really matters.
No.
So you could have focused it down to them, which would make it even more tragic.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you're going to have to make everyone forget, but they'll have to forget, right? For whatever reason.
But the
or even everyone on Earth will have to forget. Like, fuck the multiverse.
Yeah.
Like,
but we
need a way to bring in the other guys.
I like the arc. I like that, you know, Norman Osborn. Actually, I have to let's give credit to Willem Dafoe. He did his own action sequences. He did his own stunt work. Kudos to that 66-year-old man who is fit as a fiddle.
The dude's a beast.
Yeah.
The dude is a
it never gets better than his action sequence putting him through floors. I was like, this is the most visually interesting, and I'm involved in this action sequence. Compare that to anything Doc Ock does on that bridge, to anything Sam Raimi does with Doc Ock. I mean, there's nothing better than in Spider-Man 2, the Evil Dead camera of the arms, like, killing people in the hospital room. Yeah. I mean, nothing gets to that level in here.
No, I mean, that's why, yes, that's good. And I mean, I like the one in the middle with Doctor Strange. I thought that was...
But that also gets into the Doctor Strange, like, in the Mirrorverse. I really like that, too.
It's not super long. It's visually high impact and interesting.
Yes.
It does a different set of tricks.
It does.
It kind of basically takes, like, the thing I liked best about Inception, which was some of the weird visual effects that he does.
Yeah.
And it just takes that to like an extreme level of like cityscapes falling on themselves. So at least it was like, it looked cool. It was something different, right? It's like, okay, this is cool.
I like the kaleidoscopic effects that they did in Doctor Strange, and they borrowed it from this.
It's like, if you're gonna do this shit, at least do something that I'm like, wow, that's new, that's interesting. Like, that's like 5 minutes of my life where I was like, well, that's a cool visual shit that you did that isn't just
supposed to get you that way.
Yeah, but isn't just guys like flying around a city blowing shit up, which like, I mean, whatever, I don't need to see that again.
I mean, the end is that. Like the Sandman.
It's always that. It's always just a fucking bloated action sequence. Yeah. Like, whatever, I've seen this shit. Yeah, at least give me something new. Yeah. Right? Give me something different. Right? Okay, they do this one at the Statue of Liberty. Cool. I guess that's different. Whatever. Who gives a fuck? Yeah, I just don't need it. I don't want it. I mean, but see, here's the thing. Like, one thing I realized about this movie, like, here's the problem with superhero stories, or one of the many problems, is that after the origin story, nobody knows what to do.
No.
So what did they do here? They extended the origin story to 3 movies. Yeah. That's what they did. Yeah. Like, because the origin point for Spider-Man is the death of Uncle Ben.
Yeah. For this one, it's the
death of Aunt May. And that doesn't happen till well into the 3rd movie. Yeah. Not at the beginning of the 1st movie.
No, because his introduction is not even in the 1st movie. His introduction is in Captain America: Civil War. Yeah.
But what I'm saying,
he just exists.
But what I'm saying is, they extend the story that they know how to tell, at least on the level of the character, through 3 movies.
This actually this shows the weakness of the introduction of Spider-Man in Civil War. I actually criticized this at the time. The introduction of Black Panther in Civil War is excellent, and then they tacked on Spider-Man, and they didn't consider the origin or the grounding philosophy or what made Spider-Man Spider-Man, and so they had to build up and make up ground. Yeah, and you feel that in this movie.
But I mean, there's a big difference between putting like this sort of moment that hardens you at the beginning of the 1st movie and at, you know, an hour and a half into the 3rd movie, right? Yeah. So basically, they just extend the thing they know how to do. Yeah. Which makes sense, right? Because whatever But like we said with the whole end of movie 2, they didn't know what to do with that. They didn't have anything interesting to do with that.
No.
Like, you can imagine a movie that's more focused on that, but instead it's just a lever to get him to try to do the spell.
But again, you could have that as part of the reason he wants to do the spell. Actually, it would probably be even a better reason to want to do the spell. It's selfish, and then he has to come to terms with that selfishness.
But how much of wanting him to do the spell, like you said, is just to set up some other shit for Doctor Strange.
It is.
Which gets us to yet another one of our old saws about these movies, which is that everything is in service of the next thing.
Of the next thing.
But like I said, that it's
tiring.
It's one thing if you put out 50, if you're Marvel Comics and you put out 15 comics a day or a week or a month, right? Not a day, that'd be a lot. But it's another thing if you make these big movies that are like these 10, I don't know, whatever. I mean, we I think we've gotten at this movie. I mean, like I said, I still enjoyed it. Yes, if you're gonna go this Christmas season and see a big movie that you should see on the big screen, see West Side Story. 100%. Yeah. See West Side Story. Like, don't walk.
Yeah.
To your nearest multiplex.
Well,
that's a great movie. But if you like Spider-Man, I think you'll enjoy this. I mean, I still, like I said, I still found it entertaining. Some of the emotional beats worked for me.
Yeah.
Some of the humor worked for me.
Aunt May works.
There were some of the action
Tobey Maguire coming in to save his soul works.
I wish it were shorter, but like I don't know that I'll ever watch it again. But like I enjoyed it, which is all. Which, like I said, part of what I want these people to try to clear. I want them to clear with confidence lower bars.
Yeah.
That's what I want from my superhero movies. I want them to clear a medium brow bar with absolute confidence, as opposed to like try to make something like whatever they're trying to do with a movie like Eternals and just and set the bar maybe a bit higher.
Yeah.
But then just fucking plow into it and break their leg in the process, right? Set the bar at like a reasonable medium brow level and just clear it with confidence. And that's what I want from you.
I do think even with all the messiness, even with its the refusal to deal with the consequences of the second movie and just go to their own thing for this one, and I don't know, a lot of it doesn't make sense character wise and all this, but ultimately I think you're correct. They set a bar and they clear it just a bit. It isn't enjoyable relatively. I wanted to make a few comments before we moved on.
Okay.
Some things that worked for me, some missed opportunities. Here's one. One that worked for me is Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield
he's good.
Is fantastic in this, and actually is proof that he is probably the best version of Spider-Man that the universes have come up with in the live-action movies. It's just his movies are bad. And in this movie, they do him such a great emotional service. I know you haven't seen him, but he does not save Gwen Stacy in the second movie.
Yes,
she falls to her death.
Yes, when he catches her, that's a real.
And
that's maybe the best emotional moment.
His emotional reaction to it is so good. In fact, I think he's acting circles around everyone in that movie except for Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, no, he is. Yes, I agree with you. That was the best emotional beat. Is when he catches her because he redeems himself there.
I think,
but even his opening
works.
Scene where he kind of is like, "What you want? What else do you want?"
He's funny. I liked him in
you.
that. I liked so even though I don't like the process of that gimmicky scene where you know that it's a different Spider-Man. How they oriented the scene is kind of weird. How they introduced Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield is weird. It just has this weird dissonant feel to me. Ultimately, once Andrew Garfield's in the scene, he sells it.
Yeah, that's
really,
true. Like
really
that's true.
Well.
Like yeah, it is totally dumb. They're like, oh, I can't believe it's a different Spider-Man. Like what? Have you been living through the events of your
time?
It's like a lesser version of my Ghostbusters riff, where it's like, are you actually experiencing the events of this movie?
The events,
like, because you're not behaving as though you are. Like, once you've seen a bunch of people clip in from other dimensions, like seeing a different Spider-Man should be like, well, yeah,
absolutely. No, it should make sense. It's
yeah,
like, well, of course there is. Of course, there's villains from other universes. There must be.
Like, it's funny because they invert it. Like, the Spider-Men are less confused than the people who are experiencing it.
Yeah, even though they should be more confused.
Yes, the Spider-Men should be the ones who require explanation.
Yeah, what is happening?
I just all of a sudden I was fucking here. What's going on?
Yeah, this doesn't exist in my universe.
Yeah,
we're
this
not
is
grounded
weird.
in this reality.
Where's Oscorp? Yeah.
I will say, in relation to the Spider-Man and the Peters Parker, I will always refer to as, what does what they fail is a missed opportunity. There's two. So they use them, obviously in our meme culture. One, they reference Willem Dafoe. He goes, well, I'm something of a scientist myself, which they bring back. That has become a meme. That has become it's a famous line from the original. That's nice. That's a nice ode to it. But the Spider-Man pointing at each other was a missed opportunity. They did that in Into the Spider-Verse, which was a very, very fun post-credits sequence. But in this one, they do it with them not in their spider suits. It's they're all concocting these different. They're working together. There's 3 Peter Parker working on these cures for the villains, and they go, "Oh, me, Peter Parker, me," and they do that. But the most obvious opportunity was when they're on the Statue of Liberty, and they go, "Wait, I thought you were the second Spider-Man. I thought you were the third. No, I'm the number one." Like, they should have. Wide shot cut. They're having the argument. It would have been easy. It would have been
easy money.
Easy money. Here's another opportunity, and I think it would have brought. This is one that I don't think they were prepared to cast or do, and I think it would have served the arc of Jamie Foxx as Electro very well, which I think they give him a lot to do. He's the 3rd most prominent villain in this movie. Obviously, Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman is reduced to like nothing. Rhys Ifans as Lizard. I want to call him Reptile because of Mortal Kombat, but Lizard is reduced to nothing. But so the 3 prominent villains, and I think even in the marketing, are Electro, Doc Ock, and Green Goblin. And so he's just a quip machine, and it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird interpretation based off of what he ended up becoming. He is kind of entertaining in the second movie, although it's just a mess. That second movie, Amazing Spider-Man 2, is just a freaking mess. And he doesn't fit really well in this universe. But what I really liked was when he has this moment with Andrew Garfield in the movie. Again, Andrew Garfield like selling every moment that he has, which I was just impressed by.
Yeah.
He goes, I just thought you were black.
That is
which is a fun moment. But I also, if you were ballsy and you had cast a Miles Morales in this movie who comes into the universe and he also helps these 3 Spider-Man as a new entity, somebody who could maybe take a Deviation franchise forward. Miles Morales is a very interesting character. If he also was there and took off his mask and showed that there was a black Spider-Man, that arc for Electro, I think, gets completed and he becomes an entirely different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, this takes.
I'm kind of surprised they didn't bring in a Miles Morales.
I am too. Like as a fracturing of the multiverse, it was very specific, wasn't it? It was very specific for our pop cultural consciousness,
as opposed to. But that's part of the advantage of something like the animated one is you can do all kinds of interesting visual things that are fun.
Absolutely.
Right, like bringing a bunch of random ass like weird Spider-Man.
I love it. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, the world of animation.
Like, was it the Nick Cage one? I just love that.
Noir. The Spider-Man Noir. It's great. It's fantastic. And so I will not begrudge anyone who has fun during this movie, but I certainly. That's mainly the problem, isn't it? For me, is because this is going to make a shit ton of money. People are going to enjoy it. People are going to see it multiple times, and this is where I get a little exasperated, and this is why it leads to a post that I had about West Side Story. It's because I actually think we should expect more from these movies, especially from the moral aspects that we're talking about. How about the idea that the villains were in their moment of death and then they come to a different place? I mean, that would strike you as a different. That would be you're dead. This is purgatory, or this is an afterlife of some sort.
Yes, they seem in their supervillain excellence, they are unaffected by even what most of us would be mind shattering.
Yeah, mind shattering event. And that realization, and they come to that realization,
you were dead, or you'd think like whatever. You'd have no idea. It would be wild.
Yeah, and so ultimately, I feel like a lot of the questions, and this is part of the problem. They create these huge circumstances with moral questions, metaphysical questions that they aren't prepared to deal with.
Yeah, they can never cash the checks that they write.
And so that it just bothers me. It bothers me because I think we should expect more from this. I will say there are some pretty darn good highs in this movie, Willem Dafoe being one of them. I don't ultimately am convinced by the outcome of Doc Ock ultimately, but when they replace the chip and he becomes, more of himself in silence, Alfred Molina plays it well. They just don't take it really anywhere substantial. They don't even take Green Goblin anywhere substantial. Once he has his fight sequence in the middle and then he disappears till the end, I'm like, we need more of him. We need more engagement as to what he's thinking. Why is he the villain?
Why not just have a tiny crack in the multiverse and just he comes through?
I mean,
there's like a couple people come through.
And I like that. I mean, again, the dynamics between... Willem Dafoe sells it so well. So I can see why people would enjoy this movie. I just want better, ultimately, even though this works and is serviceable.
It's... I mean, yeah, I agree with you.
So I think that's all I really have to say. Those were some of the comments that I and as the more I think about it, the more negative I get on Spider-Man, mostly because it is the worst, I think, of this trilogy, because it's not as grounded, it's not as real, none of the character dynamics make much sense. But the moral question at the center of it gets me through. Do I save these people? Do I impact the multiverse? But again, ultimately, it doesn't matter. They do impact the multiverse. They do these things. And does he save them? Yeah, probably. I guess.
But also, I think that we see the problem of it. I just wanted to mention this, which as a coda, the post-credit sequence, the vaunted Marvel... Well, there's the funny one with, what's his name?
Was it Venom. Funny? With Tom Hardy?
But at least that, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But so there's the first post-credits scene, which is the scene with Tom Hardy being fucking weird.
He's schizophrenic Venom.
Venom. That's what but then the end post-credit sequence is just a trailer.
It's just a trailer.
It's a trailer, which seems like a portrayal of even that idea. But it sort of tips you the hand of what this is all about, which is that see the next thing.
Yeah.
Doctor
Strange will return.
The next thing is the big thing.
Yeah.
I don't recall them ever doing one that was a straight up trailer. It's usually a legit scene.
Yeah,
they didn't have a scene, so they just did a trailer.
But this is straight up trailer.
Yeah, this is not. This isn't a little teaser scene.
This is multiple scenes, multiple instances. It is a trailer. Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, that's what it is. It's just keep you on the hook.
I guess. I mean, I like Doctor Strange. He's one of my personal favorite comic book heroes. I love him.
You are a strange motherfucker.
I am a strange person. I'm a strange head. Whatever it is, I don't know.
The strangest.
But let's. You want to move on to the next movie?
Let's talk about the next great franchise starting up. The next great cinematic universe.
I would be interested in a Carnival-esque universe.
You're gonna be like the Nightmare Alley extended universe, the NACU.
Yeah, I think the other stories might be more interesting than the one Guillermo del Toro has adapted, because I
like Carnivals. I gotta say that.
I do too.
Like, from an aesthetic standpoint, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my first comment on this movie. Spoiler-free review.
Well, and that's the half. That's the first half, and then you leave it. So I wonder.
Carnivals are a rad thing to make movies about.
I agree.
You could always go back to that well.
Yes.
Because they're fucking cool looking. They're freaky.
Yeah,
they're great.
It has
they're cinematic gold.
Yeah, they have such an interesting aesthetic and I think historical quality of what fascinates people is the freakish, is the weird, is
but also we
marginalized.
We come back to this. We come back again to the huckster. This is the. Yeah. I think cinematically, this is the year of the huckster.
Yes.
This is our. The truth is, it makes sense, and I've said this before, but I keep seeing it. This is our first wave of true post-Trump movies, right?
Yeah.
Because these movies were all conceived of and made in the wake of the Trump presidency.
I agree.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that, like I've said before, I don't think any one of them is clearly about Trump. I mean, Red Rocket is the one that's most about Trump, just because it talks about him in a kind of indirect way.
It's in the cultural. Yeah.
But I'm not saying that any one of these individual movies are this is a response to Trump. That's not what I'm saying, and that's not what I think. But the huckster is in the air.
Yeah.
The huckster, we've seen so many hucksters.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any sort of archetypal character type.
Yeah.
That is more in evidence in this crop of prestige movies coming at the end of 2021 than the charlatan.
Yeah. The charlatan is of a cultural interest right now.
And I think that has to be about Trump. I can't see any other cultural antecedent. Because we're just awash in movies about salesmen.
Yeah.
right? And that's what this movie is, right?
That's what
this
this movie
is about the perils, we might say, of salesmanship.
Yeah, it really is. And so
A
it's
cautionary
interesting.
tale.
It's interesting. So this is not necessarily a direct remake, though it is very strongly in the hand of remake. But it's not also a pure readaptation of, I should say, William Lindsay Grisham's novel Nightmare Alley. It came out in 1946. It was adapted into a movie in 1947 by William Goulding, and starred Tyrone Power. And this was a passion project for Tyrone Power. He loved the book. He bought the rights, or at least serviced and pressured the rights to be purchased in his favor. And it is a different role for him. He was a swashbuckler. He was a good-looking romantic lead, and so this was he was like, I want to go into the darkness. I mean, post World War II, a lot of these actors, Jimmy Stewart, couldn't do the same kind of stuff anymore.
It's a little harder to feel so rosy.
Yeah, it was hard to be rosy in the aspects of life, and so Tyrone Power ventured a very, very dark road in Nightmare Alley. And it's hard. If you haven't seen the original, it actually would do you a service to probably enjoy this version more. Because the original is tight. It's an hour 47. It's a tight.
Ooh, just give me sub 2-hour movies, Hollywood.
Yeah, no.
Who do I need to talk to? Who do we need to get on the phone?
And it's interesting.
Be like, just give me a 100-minute movie, motherfuckers.
Exactly. I mean, and it really serves it serves the material well. Actually, I think the disservice of this movie is they stretch into 2.5 hours, and actually, the material's not wanting for 2.5 hours. I actually think it would have serviced itself well to be shorter. And so the original is tight.
Especially that second act.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really a 2-act story.
Yeah,
right?
It
like an
functions
epilogue.
in time. Yeah, with a little bit of epilogue.
But yeah, that second part is just like
is stretched.
Let's get to it, boys.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting because it just is so languid. You're just like, oh my god. Well, yeah, it's shot beautifully. Dan Louston, who shot Shape of Water, shoots
looks
this.
Great.
Gorgeous.
Looks great. But I mean, we all know where it's going, right? Exactly. We all know what the climax is going to be.
My goodness,
it's telegraphed basically right away.
Yeah, and that's
or not the exact climax, but like what it's going to look like.
Well, so it's interesting because I think it is telegraphed pretty obviously. I mean, the obsession with the geek as a monster. And
I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the climactic.
Oh yes,
like how they bring things falling down.
Yes, the downfall.
Like I'm not saying it's telegraphed exactly how that happens, but the idea that like it's going to escalate to like something like that is pretty obvious from basically.
I agree.
Because basically the meat of the movie, there's kind of an illusion of time, and then we go to a different setting. But yeah, the whole thing. So what's good about this movie? See, this again, I think this feels like a Scotch verdict to me too, just like the other one, because it looks great.
Oh, looks
great.
Good looking.
A ton of great actors just being great, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, are all of them great? I
think Cooper does a good job.
He's all right.
I buy him in this role.
He's all right. So I have some initial, when we get into spoiler like specifics, I have very specific complaints about the adaptation and the direction, because I think they undermine the message of this movie with some weird choices narratively. And
there's some agree. Hard agree on some of the narrative choices, but like I'm just saying, like,
and also but that leads into some of his performance elements. Some of the time I'm not convinced that he would actually be a good carnival barker. Like I don't believe that he would be. They make a point that he's good looking, and he serves that very well. Like, he uses his good looks to kind of create a monster. I think Tyrone Power did a very good job with that, in how he used his good looks to have a sunken, demoralized monster be created.
Yes. Having someone pretty fall is always more compelling.
Yeah, right? But I also just like, he comes and he's like monosyllabic, and you're gonna tell me that he becomes a convincing carnival barker and charmer? Like, I'm like, I don't necessarily agree.
So here's something that's interesting about this movie, and there was something about it that was both weird, but I actually kind of liked. I felt like the movie, for as long as it is, it has very little exposition. Like, I feel like it basically throws you into it.
They do.
I kept waiting, and I'm glad it didn't happen, for the scene where, like, some of the stuff would be like his background is never, like, it's alluded to and kind of dribbled out, but there's not like any moment where you're like, okay, here's what's going on. Like here's, I really liked that, and it kind of gives the movie, the first part of the movie, which I think we're going to agree is the better part of the movie.
Yes.
A lot of momentum, right? I mean, I concede your point. Like, I mean, but they decide to go with kind of like his. It seems to me that the idea of his charm is that it's understated, right?
Yeah.
He seems it works for him because he doesn't seem like a used car salesman, right? He seems just like kind of a humble, kind of slightly southern guy who's also good looking and can kind of turn on the charisma when he needs to. Mm-hmm. Like this, like where he's like asking David Strathairn to teach him, right, early in the movie.
This will be one of my main complaints about.
But I mean, the way that he does it is like, I can see, like, he understands how to make that person like him.
Yeah.
In a way that's flattering and non-obvious, right? Yeah. That's the thing is, I think that the way they decide to interpret that character is as part of his charm is that he is not. He doesn't seem like he contrasts with the Willem Dafoe character who's obviously a salesman, right? Yes. And you can tell he's a salesman.
And he's very obvious about, like, he's overt. He'll like make a I mean, Willem Dafoe also shines really well as kind of the owner.
Well, what I love is in my ongoing theory that they have that all movies occur ultimately in the same universe. This is his Wild at Heart character with slightly better teeth.
Yeah.
So they resurrect him.
The eerie similarities.
They resurrect. So that guy didn't kill himself in Wild at Heart, but instead is somehow sucked, perhaps through a gap in the multiverse, into the universe of Nightmare Alley.
It's funny because like he does show him, like he does these oratory examples of salesmanship, and then he tells him what's at the undercurrent of it. He goes, nah, but that's not really what it is.
Yes,
like,
yes.
It is kind of interesting how open he is about his duplicitousness as a salesman for the freak show.
But I guess all I'm saying in that is that to me, I feel like in terms of buying him as the salesman, I think the Cooper character actually works because the first part of the movie is really him selling himself to these other people who then take them under his wing because he's kind of like a puppy.
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, I just want to learn from you.
They almost operate him as a blank slate because they're putting
literally right. Yeah. I mean, we know this one thing about him, that there's something dark in his past vis-a-vis his
they don't
father.
care, or that everybody.
But outside of that,
past.
you never learn anything about his past.
Yeah,
I think right outside of that one incident.
One incident that they but by the way, which is not in the book nor is it in the original movie.
So
that is an invention for this movie.
So I mean, yeah, I guess this is a hard movie for me to evaluate because, yes, does it look great? Check. Does it have great actors in it? Check.
How about this? Are you convinced of its noirish angle of a moral downfall?
No.
Okay. I think that is where that is very important.
I don't think the way it unwinds all its premises is particularly interesting.
And I would agree with you. I think Guillermo del Toro fails here. Like somebody who is so sympathetic of monsters in kind of an aesthetic degree, he utilizes the freaks and he utilizes monsters in our visage to have empathy for the misunderstood. This is where his strengths lie, and this is where Shape of Water comes to mind, or the ghosts in Devil's Backbone, which there's a lot of visual homage to Devil's Backbone in this because of the fetuses inside these bottles. But Kronos, I mean Pan's Labyrinth, the monsters are guides and directions to a realm of another world, an escape from the horrors and the monsters of men that are more horrifying than any monster could really devise, whether it is the Spanish Civil War, whether it is the Spanish Civil War again in Devil's Backbone. It's the monsters of impact where people are at the consequence of this action. So when he actually delves into what is the darkness of the human soul, which Nightmare Alley is about that. I mean, the title is about finding the destitute, the downtrodden, the desperate in a time of great upheaval of World War II and the consequences of the Great Depression that still linger, and finding all of these people in what they deem the Nightmare Alley and giving them an opportunity and a chance. And it is about that divide in the American consciousness, the American dream. It's like this idea of opportunity versus what is the reality of it. And I don't think Guillermo del Toro understands what makes men monsters. And in fact, if you look at his depiction of men as monsters, they're exaggerated, they're over the top, they are clearly evil. There is no real subtlety and layers to his villains, and that goes for Michael Shannon in Shape of Water. It goes for the wonderful actor, I forget his name, in Pan's Labyrinth, who plays the general. He doesn't understand the subtleties of this. And so for me, the ultimate failing of Nightmare Alley is he does not get into the human soul of what makes us dark and what makes us prone to our own disaster and primal urges or selfish yearnings. And that's what noir is supposed to be about, and I think he fails. And ultimately the movie becomes a failure for me. Which that doesn't take away from... I agree with you. I think it is well acted. I don't know if Bradley Cooper is the choice. He works. I don't think... I think I could see other people in the role. Cate Blanchett and Richard Jenkins are chewing scenery almost to the point of the mastication of it is just over the top. Cate Blanchett being one that works, Richard Jenkins being one that doesn't. I think some of the more subtle performances from like Rooney Mara work. They really underwrite Toni Collette. They give more to David Strathairn, who works, but again, when we get into some spoiler territory, how they rewrote the dynamic between Xena, Pete, and Stanton is an undermine to the whole message at heart. And so I ultimately am frustrated by this movie because it has all the underpinnings of what could be a great movie, and it ultimately flounders. And I don't. Is
that a Shape of Water illusion there with flounders?
Yeah, it flounders. Yeah.
So that was funny. I was just thinking about Shape of Water, which I really liked, and I think works.
I like it. Yeah.
And I think it gets to the heart of like who is Del Toro as a filmmaker?
Yeah.
Like what's a really good... I like the first Hellboy movie a lot, for instance.
I do too.
That's a great... And that sort of...
Great movie.
Going back to superhero movies, right, gets at like, okay, well, there's a guy that can make a great superhero movie because his visual sense is so excellent.
Visual sense is great,
such
but he...
a unique sort of part of his filmmaking.
Yeah, and it also serves that character well.
Yes.
Because he is misunderstood. He has a visual appearance that would be off-putting, but he has a heart of gold, and he really is trying to be a good guy, person.
But he appears like a monster, but he's actually a sympathetic character, which is sort of, I guess, Del Toro's sweet spot is as you say, the person who appears monstrous, but is actually a good guy.
Yeah, this is where his sympathies lie, and this is where his strengths lie.
Yeah. And so talking about people who look normal but are actually the real monsters is a harder path for him.
Well, and he juxtaposes them well, right? Like in Shape of Water, you need a kind of over-the-top villain. You need somebody who is clearly the and
he's making these hyper-stylized movies where, it's not clear how we should sort of see them in their... Like, he is attempting to do kind of fairy tales and mythological type storytelling in a way that it, I guess, is similar to superhero movies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to do spoilers? I feel good about our spoiler-free review.
Yeah, before we get into spoilers, would you recommend this just on a visual?
I don't know, maybe. I think the people who fuck you, Ghostbusters. I think the people who want to see it are going to see it because I think Del Toro has his heads. I think the people who love Del Toro are going to get at least some of what they want out of it, which is the kind of sumptuous visual performance that he offers.
It feels like a Guillermo del Toro movie. It operates like a Guillermo del Toro movie in the same way that like Crimson Peak does. Crimson Peak is that gothic horror story done Guillermo del Toro style. This is a classic noir done Guillermo del Toro style.
Yeah. And so I think that... I don't know. I would say people who want to see this will see it, and they know what they're getting themselves into. if you're just kind of on the fence, I would maybe go see something else. Cause,
I do think
I don't think it's like, if it's not your thing, I don't think you're gonna.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big dividing point. Like, if this is your thing, you'll probably enjoy it, and I enjoyed it. Like, I'm not like upset I saw it, or I didn't think like, oh, this is fucking terrible. This is a waste of my time.
It's not that. It doesn't give you that feeling.
But ultimately, is it satisfying from a storytelling perspective? No, it's not.
I don't think so.
The first half is great just in terms of the visual element. The whole movie looks great, but
you're right. I think once it leaves the carnival, it once you get into the kind of the polished, I think it's New York. I don't know. Maybe it's Chicago.
But also that, like we said, that whole part of the story is just hugely bloated.
It's bloated. It's underserviced.
Like the momentum of the movie dies because it's like, we're just building up to this thing.
Yeah,
right?
the obvious conclusion.
Yeah.
The obvious conclusion. That is telegraphed. That is, but then again, once it's obvious, it has to be about character choice, and it has to be about a deeply character study driven idea of why this character's making these decisions. And when we get into spoilers, I'll say why that telegraphed nature. Guillermo del Toro from the very beginning undermines his entire goal, and we'll get into that. But ultimately, I would say it is difficult runtime to get through. It's 2.5 hours, and long. You do feel it. It needed to be 30 minutes shorter.
It's too long, and that could all come out of the second half.
Oh yeah, you could tighten that second half. It doesn't have to be as indulgent, and it doesn't have the interesting visual flourish that a carnival gives. The carnival stuff, even just the little details of the snake man in the background or him dancing and Rooney Mara's watching. It's a wonderful, gorgeous shot of him dancing and doing the thing. And it's a fog is coming in.
But it's also just a fun, compelling world to inhabit.
I agree. Yeah.
Right.
And this is actually the problem.
The second part of the movie in the city is like, it still looks good, but it's not like, oh my goodness, like I really I love. Like, I mean, that's one thing Del Toro can do is create these worlds that you want to step into. Yeah. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Just to see them, right? I mean, obviously there's a lot of darkness to the carnival. It's very frightening in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But you'd go there if you could, just to walk around it and see it.
I think it is a compliment to carnivals of its time, but also a compliment to how he captures them. There is such an intrigue to these worlds, and that's why people bought tickets. That's why people wanted to see monstrosities and weirdos.
It's cinematic, right? You can see why. Like, someone would have those pictures in their head and be like, oh, this would look cool. Like, I want to show this to the world.
Yes. Yeah.
Which, I don't know if you saw that Del Toro exhibit that they did at LACMA. It was great.
Yes.
But he has all these sketchbooks. I mean, clearly he's got images in his head.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there are other filmmakers that have this quality, right, where they know where they want to start and they know where they're going to go, but they don't always get there in a way that's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's a very simple storytelling. A tale as old as time about telling tales.
It's true.
And it's a problem that he has.
Yes.
Like, he doesn't always get there in the way that is, like, he knows where he wants to go. Yeah. Like, even look at Shape of Water, right? He's got this idea of this very visually compelling situation. And he knows how it's going to end. He knows that last sequence, right?
He knows that shot.
Where he's going.
He's drawn it.
And the question is, how well does he get there? And I think in Shape of Water, he gets there in a more compelling way
than this.
Even if the Shannon villain is cartoonish and over the top,
it's meant to serve that nature of the story.
But that is
that
at
Beauty
most
and the Beast quality.
That is at most one problem, even if you think it's a problem at all. Whereas this movie, in its unfolding, has like multiple problems, and multiple things that just don't work. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's my spoiler-free top-line takeaway. Is if you're a Del Toro person, go see it. The carnival stuff is great. It's visually compelling. If you think you want to see it, you probably should go see it in a movie theater. I don't think that it would be as impactful.
Apparently there's a black and white version coming out next month.
Course.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be better, although I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't rush out to see it if it's not your thing.
Yeah. This would, I mean, as noir has shown, it was a very popular but also very cheap and, B-movie structured idea from the past that allowed some interesting character ideas, some kind of ruminations of the darkness that the Great Depression alluded to, that the World War II alluded to, and I did a whole series on noir, and it was my second season, so it was rough and tumble at times, but I thought very compelling to get into the aspects of the genre. And we did talk about Nightmare Alley. We talked about the original, which I think is very much worth your time. Criterion has it. I actually think it's free on YouTube, and you should watch the original. The original is fantastic in its way, but I will say that what this movie exposes in the runtime is that it exposes the weaknesses of the story. I mean, there are some weaknesses into the original that I think are very obvious, but that one is short, and so it doesn't ruminate on the weaknesses. This one, in stretching it out, does so. So here's the big problem.
Okay, spoilers.
The movie the movie opens up with, I think, its biggest mistake, and it shows Stan Carlisle. You don't know what the body is, but you know that it's not in a kosher sense, that it is being disposed of in good moral sense. He's disposing of a body and burns it along with the house down. I think it's pretty obvious what it's alluded to, and that his past is dark.
Yeah, I don't understand this at all.
Yes.
Why is this in the movie? Like, there's no aspect of his motivation that is not explicable on its own terms.
No.
He wants to get big.
Yes.
Like, of course.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need like some weird dead father or hatred thing.
No. Yeah.
I guess that's part of what they want to leverage with the therapy shit with Cate Blanchett.
No, but see, that's the thing. So this is the big problem of this movie, is what they orient versus what they actually expose. Especially with the Cate Blanchett psychologist orientation, and by the way, the whole novel, William Lindsay Grisham was trying to really articulate. He actually met a carnival worker when he was fought for the Loyalists in the Spanish Civil War.
Interesting.
And he based a lot of that world off of that experience, talking with this man. And what he brought to the story was a lot of personal things. He was an unfaithful man. He was an alcoholic. He tried psychiatry, and he felt betrayed by psychiatry. He also hated religion. Like, you can feel the animus in his soul in that novel, and you can feel it in this world. He hates all these institutions. He hates these things. And he's fascinated by carnivals. And he's fascinated by what they say about the true human aspects versus what is in his soul. And so that's the interesting thing. In this movie,
doesn't the Willem Dafoe character even say everyone wants to feel better than about who they are?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, those are the more interesting on the nose. I mean, Willem Dafoe's dialogue is so on the nose. Of beast or man, the whole thing. It's like
he is the thesis, right? He is the thesis,
and he's
gonna say the thesis.
Very on the nose, which is very unfortunate. But what's even more on the nose and actually betrays the whole trajectory of Stan Carlisle, and what the original movie had to say, and I think is more compelling and more interesting thesis, is that Stan Carlisle arrives at the carnival as a bad man. And the whole idea that maybe the whole thing is maybe it's a second chance, but he's murdered somebody or done something precarious or immoral to a body, and you don't know necessarily what, but it tells you right from the bat Stan Carlisle is a bad man. It's interesting to compare it to the original. The original opens up in a carnival, and he is part of the Xena Pete show. Immediately. That's the dynamic. He is the guy getting the questions that you eventually get there in the Guillermo del Toro movie. But that's how you were introduced to Stan Carlisle. And what I like about the original is that the trajectory is a man of lowly stature, but big ideas and ambition. And isn't that the American con artist trajectory?
Yeah.
He wants bigger things. And ultimately, in aspiring to those bigger things and getting into waters that he was not prepared to do, not prepared to navigate, he, like Icarus, flies too close to the sun and falls and has a downfall. A moral downfall because he makes increasingly questionable, not necessarily immoral decisions, but they are noirish. It's like, it's not too bad. And that's what this movie fails to articulate. Is that Stan Carlisle is a bad guy from the beginning, therefore, ultimately the end is his comeuppance. But that's not what the movie should be about. It should be it should be about the tiny little decisions of usury. And they undermine that whole dynamic by changing up in this movie the relationship he has with Xena and Pete. In the original movie, Xena is who he's after. There's a flirtation. I mean, this movie, she really goes for it, and she's like cheating on her husband with this guy. But what's alluded to is that there's a flirtation and an interest. But she loves her husband. He is an alcoholic. He is drinking himself to death, and that's a very frustration on her, and that's why she ventures flirtations with Stan. I don't think it's alluded to that maybe it's fulfilled. By the way, it's the 40s, so different code, production code, so you don't necessarily have that dynamic. But he's after Xena. And when he hears that Xena and Pete have a show where they have a secret code, he offers, he's like, in the original, he's like, oh, I mean, I can help you with that if you want to teach me the code. And Pete, in that movie, is adamant about never teaching him a goddamn thing because it's their retirement fund. He's like, no, that's our retirement. He says in the original, over my dead body, which eventually comes to fruition.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. They change up the dynamic of Xena and Pete, where he's learning from Pete as sort of a mentor-protege relationship. It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense, and it also undermines the character of Xena, which I think is a more compelling character in the original. And Toni Collette could have played this character fascinatingly well. But
I mean, she's great even with what she's given.
Even with what she's given, but they undermine that character. They undermine her autonomy and the decision, her autonomy and the stakes between the dynamic, and it's the subtlety of the original and it's done in such an economic way. It's a subtlety. He offers that he'll learn the code. Pete's adamant about not, and then it's this whole dynamic where he has Pete really wants alcohol, and in the original, and he's like, well, maybe I'll get you some, and he accidentally gives him wood alcohol. Accidentally. This is devastating for him. And in the movie, it's played as though, obviously a question, but it does not come to a kind of moral consciousness. It's like once it's ventured that it might be an accident, it's clear it's an accident. He realizes it right at the time that he gave him wood alcohol.
But it kind of passes without a trace.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, exactly.
It's not a big deal one way or the other. That's a
plot
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's this parallel with what happens with the Cate Blanchett character too, where it's like she seems to really have it in for him.
Yes, yeah.
In a way that never makes sense to me. Because he embarrassed her once.
Yes.
She decides she's gonna fucking ruin this dude's life.
Ruin his life. Yeah.
It just doesn't work for me.
There's and I'll when we get to her, there's a different dynamic in the novel, but and again, there's some weirdness, but I really want to focus on this thing about Stan Carlisle's like moral decrepitude, like whatever he's going through and his changes, the subtle change in Nightmare Alley. He's clearly just trying to manipulate. He's like, yeah, teach me this code because I'm gonna go use it and I'm gonna go make money off of it. It's the subtle things that are remarkably more interesting in the original. Pete dies and then he convinces Xena to teach him the code, which is more, I think, insidious.
Yes, but also you call it subtle, but in a way like the traditional noir has more clarity to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He comes in a bad guy. He tries to be good, but he can't quite do it. And then the bad thing that happens isn't really his fault in a moral sense. No. It's just an accident.
It's an accident.
Which then reinforces his idea, like, whatever I do, it's going to end up bad, right? Yeah. Which is classic noir shit.
Yeah.
Like, I will aspire to be good, or at least to be less bad.
Yes.
Like, trying to get with this guy's wife and learn this code is bad, but it's not killing someone bad. It's just kind of normal bad. Yeah. So I tried to be better, but I ended up killing the dude anyways. Yeah. So this sense of being snake bit, right? Versus this movie where it's like, is he good? Is he bad?
He's bad.
Do things happen for... that's not the way I read the movie. I read him as like just like he kind of is ambitious, but maybe he's not being honest with himself because he kind of morally postures. Like in the scene where they talk about getting a guy to geek, he's like, "That's fucking terrible. Are we just gonna leave this guy here?" So he has like this moral posturing that he does, also around the drinking.
Yeah.
But then to me, it's a lot with him. The waters are just very muddy.
Yeah.
right?
Well, and
for me at least.
Yeah, well, they're muddy and not in the way that it makes it complex. They just make it confusing.
No, it's not like interestingly ambiguous.
No,
because that's a different character, right? A character who's just sort of amoral, amorally ambitious. They kind of take him to that territory, maybe.
Yeah, not really.
But like not in a way that's really interesting or compelling.
No,
like,
not
it's,
really.
Like it's not like he like develops in some interesting way where it's not the noir thing where it's like no matter what I do I'm snake bit.
Yeah.
But it's also not like it sort of gestures at the idea that like, well, I'm just going to take advantage of rich people.
Yeah.
But he never really articulates anything around that either. Like,
no.
It's not like, oh yeah, what I'm doing is okay because these motherfuckers are rich. I hate them. Like, that could be another angle, but it's nothing... Yeah, the character he is weirdly sort of blank.
Yeah, it is sort of interesting. And that's the thing. It's like when taking out Xena in the original, he invites Molly into... He's like learning the code from Xena, but Molly's there as well, just to, And obviously, like, immediately that you go, wait, that's a red flag to have Molly, because he's going to use it. He's going to be like, oh, now you know it, and we're going to go off and do our own thing. And that's where the movie ends on the first half of the first one and for this one. And they go on to utilize that code and become, it ends up being spiritualism, but they're doing the con artist act of using the code and kind of doing mentalist act. In the book, it's interesting because he becomes bored with the mentalist act and wants to do spiritualism because it's more fascinating to him, because he's learned cold reading. He wants to kind of put on a bombastic act. But what's interesting is it's the stress of the job that leads him to psychiatry, not some personal, we hate each other. That is directly from the movie where she gets embarrassed and then she's like, I don't like this guy. He's too full of himself. I'm going to bring him down.
But her what she ends up doing to him is so outsized for what. I mean, isn't it like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like I was really, what I expected was going to happen. I expected that she had been a victim of the guy.
Yeah.
And maybe she was.
Well, I think she is. I think that's what the
but that's
is.
never made explicit.
It's not made explicit, but I think she is a victim.
She was going to use him, but at the end of the day, she really wants to see Bradley Cooper's downfall, and that I just didn't understand.
Well, see, that's the interesting
thing. She takes
thing.
such pleasure in fucking destroying this dude who, like, he's a kind of a slimy dude, but he's also like... Yeah. He's also, I mean, it's just like so many things are... Because one thing that the movie raises that could have been interesting if it really wanted to explore it in the second half, but it just kind of comes and goes, is this idea of, like, who's the real charlatan, me or you?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? But that's just kind of gestured at. Because he's like, well, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But what is it you're doing?
Yeah. She is a more villainous character, and I think in the mind of even the author, because of the status, the science that she represents.
I just feel like it feels a little outsized. It's like when Cartman feeds that kid his parents for feeding him pubes. Like, I mean, it just seems like about 7 steps further than what is merited, given the fairly low level of embarrassment he does to her.
Well, and I would say that I get what the movie is trying to do, but you're right, they don't get there credibly, because I think she is a victim of Grindel, who's played by Richard Jenkins, who is also scenery chewing into a ridiculous degree. It became very obvious where the R rating came from, minus the violence, was because Richard Jenkins cussed so much, and he wasn't very convincing at it. Like, it just came...
they were trying to do like an unhinged Citizen Kane thing with him, which is like a weird character to drop into this movie.
He is. I mean, but you could also say
he's like very William Randolph Hearst kind of, or like who's the aviator guy? Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes. Yeah.
Like, he has big Howard Hughes energy.
Yeah.
But they just kind of dropped that. But once again, like, here's another idea. Like, that's the thing about this movie is it's like it kind of has these ideas like, oh, this character is going to stand in for this thing or that thing, but none of it really goes anywhere interesting, right?
No, none of it really goes anywhere. I'm actually... Hold on, I'm going to check something. Equipment, sorry.
That's okay.
No, we're good.
Oh, good.
I was just checking.
I saw you peek over there a couple times. I was getting nervous.
I'm just keeping an eye out because sometimes this equipment is faulty.
Need to make more money, so get good gear.
Well, I will agree with you. They bring up these ideas, and you're right. They're more gestures. They're more symbolic. They're more kind of these odes to our time, whether it be rich people who can buy their way out of they make it's very obvious. He's like, do you think you can buy happiness or something like that? And he goes, I just, not to be frank, I know I can, is one of the lines that he says. And so I get where the impetus of these ideas come from, but they go nowhere, and they're not very interesting. They're very simplistic towards the
it's like he has this palette of all these types, and he's like, well, I'll put a little dash of Susan Kane in here. I'll put a little smattering of whatever. Like if the second act was oriented around like a tight conflict around the difference between his form of charlatanism and her form of charlatanism, psychiatry versus mentalism.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a tight little dance you can do.
Yes.
As you're conning this other guy, but instead it's like there's this relationship stuff that kind of goes on, like the kind of the falling apart of his romance.
Yes.
Like they just like, it's not that any one of them like couldn't work, but it's just he kind of chooses that that second part is going to be kind of driven by everything.
Yeah.
And in turn, it becomes just very muddy and indistinct. Yeah. When at the end of the day, we all know where this is going. He's going to go for the big con, and he's going to lose. Yeah. Right? He's going to go as big as he can and fail.
Yeah.
Because that's what has to happen, because it's a noir.
Yep.
He's going to keep reaching and reaching and reaching, and it's going to eventually blow up in his face.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all know that's going to happen. It happens, but it takes us a long time to get there. Much longer.
Almost too long.
Much longer than it needs to for what is.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about like screenwriting, you talk about like the inevitable scene, right? Okay, let's get to the point where he tries to go too far, and it fucking blows up in his face.
So this is
well,
interesting.
We know it's coming
because the original has the same weaknesses. The original, but it doesn't take that long to get to them and to these events.
But I don't even think that's a weakness. Like, that's the way it has to go.
No, that's not what I mean. That is the way it has to go. What I mean is that the dance between psychiatry and mentalism is a thing that's not explored to its fullest extent. They're interesting ideas, but again, it comes from a novel that is, trying to wrestle with their own circumstance as a creator, but also putting it into a narrative, how he feels about these things. Because he has a supreme dislike for all of these con artistries that he equates in psychiatry to mentalism as kind of being equivalent. But that dance could be focused on more from the novel, from the original, in this one. But again, when you bloat the runtime like this does, the weaknesses of that dance become more obvious. And I think that's my main problem with this movie, is that in the original, it's like, that there's a trajectory, an uplift, a downfall that's expected, but it all kind of orients and makes sense, and they get to it quickly. And it is the thing that needs to happen. And in this movie, we all know it's going to happen, but man, does it just drags it. It drags a corpse to the hole. Like, that's what it really is.
You've got a lot of plot line around his failing marriage.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of plot around him having scene after scene with Richard Jenkins, where Jenkins demands more. And you have all these scenes between him and Blanchett about the psychiatry angle. And it's like,
and she's seducing him to get truth,
Each of those plot lines could have had a scene or two just lopped out of them.
Yes.
Right? Even if you want to do them all because you feel like you have to, like, but even then, like, having the wife leave for him to run and come back so he can get her to do it, like, I don't know what that accomplishes. I don't think that really adds much to the story. So, I mean, if you just lop out that plot line and then tighten up the shrink thing and the rich guy thing, because, I mean, I do think the scene they ultimately get to, like, the way they unravel it is well executed, where, who is it, Mary Steenburgen?
Okay, so this little scene, I think, is probably the best thing they added.
I loved it.
It's so
loved it, but the way that then the guy hears it on the radio and he runs out, like his thug runs out, Like, that worked. Like, the
Yes.
scene, that's the thing, is where he wants to go is correct. Like, that scene
Yes.
is well executed
Yes.
and is a great little thing. It's a great little clockwork machine of storytelling. But like, the scene is overdetermined to such an extent. Like part of the storyteller's task is to know, like, when does the scene have to happen? Like, when have I determined, when has it become inevitable?
Yeah.
And it's like, you just don't need all this other shit. Like, you could have gotten to that scene so much faster.
Yeah.
As opposed to have, like, a bloated second act and then a bloated epilogue.
Yeah.
Like the truth is, you could have gotten to that scene faster, and then once we get to the epilogue where, he becomes a geek, shock of all shocks, like, the only scene that you need is the very last one. Everything else should be put in, like, where they're sitting around drinking the drink, like, where he runs onto the train, he's on the train.
Funny, all of these things are in the original, and they do them much quicker, and they get to the point. They just get to the point.
Honestly, like, shades of, like, Return of the King, waiting for them to get on that fucking boat. Like, okay, so the scene where you gotta have the final scene. That's the payoff, right? That's the final fall.
Yeah.
Everything between that and when he gets on the train is optional and should be inserted with the greatest, with the most sharp scissors.
Yes,
right. Like,
absolutely.
It's like, I'm not saying there maybe shouldn't be, like, one scene in there, and I would have to look at it again and really think hard about it to see what would make the most sense. But it's just like, it just feels like, okay, like, we get it. He's fucked up. Like, you've taken him there. You fucked him up. He's fucked up. Like, okay, let's get to it.
Yeah.
And I just don't... It just seems to me like... I don't know what it is exactly. I mean, Del Toro is a genius filmmaker, right? Whatever his flaws are, he is a genius. But his particular genius, right, is so... I mean, we've talked about filmmakers like this year. I feel similar, in a way it's similar to how we felt about Edgar Wright and Last Night in Soho. Like,
I agree.
Their cinematic gifts are evident and inarguable.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's no point, like, of course they're great at a lot of shit involved with making movies. But there's something like, and this again goes to what we said about Spielberg, like, Spielberg knows himself well enough to know he's not a great writer. Yeah. He does not believe himself to be a great writer.
He has not really written anything most of his entire career.
And when he writes, he's like, I got to collaborate with people. We got to improvise stuff. That's not what my strong suit is. Whereas, like, these movies, I mean, I'm glad that these guys get the juice to make the movies they want to make.
I do agree.
It makes me happy. I'd give it to them by all means, and I'll take their hits and their misses.
Yeah, I would too.
I think that prolific filmmakers are going to have good movies and less good movies. They can't all be great, right? They can't all be great. Even with even better filmmakers, they can't all be great. I'd rather have them work and put stuff out there and have some of it be great and some of it be not great. But, like, you just get the sense that someone somewhere along the line needed to be saying, like, no, not that, not that.
Yeah.
That's not it. That's
checks.
not it.
Some checks.
That's not it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to go 2.5 hours on this one. This is not a 2.5 hour movie.
It's not.
This is not a 2.5 hour movie. This is a 2 hour movie. And you don't need this. Most. And you don't need this. And you don't need this. You can cut this, and you can cut this, and you can cut that. Yeah. Right? And I think that maybe these people have gotten to the... I mean, clearly, like, I don't know. I'm sure this movie cost a lot of money to make.
A lot.
Like, they're giving him the juice. Like, maybe you get to a point where nobody is over your shoulder. You know, I don't know. Like,
I don't know.
But we also don't want it to be a suit, right? I mean, that's the problem, right? Is I don't know what the solution is because we don't want a suit coming in to cut this.
No.
But on the other hand, when you're Spielberg and you go get Tony Kushner, you're like, okay, I got the right guy. Yeah. Like I feel like you need that guy, right? A guy who's, like, artistically committed to the story, but also has the writer's sense to come in and say, like, yeah, that's extra. Do we need this? Do we need this? Do we need this? Yeah. Yeah. Because, like, that is what would take this movie to be at least being a really good movie is just someone who just took the scissors to it. Yeah. Yeah. But you don't want to say that about a great director because you're like, let him make the thing he wants to make. But, you know, Like I said, different people just have different strengths.
Yeah, but I
like,
think ultimately, even if you cut it, this is ultimately the problem. He does not understand that good people, or people in certain circumstances who could be good people but make questionable decisions. That's what noir is really about. It's not usually about bad people who get their comeuppance, because that's what ultimately that's what this movie's about. He is a bad person. He is killed. He is murdered. That's his past. And ultimately it comes around, he becomes a geek. And ultimately, the other actions that he makes doesn't matter, because it's his first action is what he deserves, to be a recluse, a recluse of the pageantry of the carnival, is that he is reached his lowest of lows, and he deserves this.
Yeah.
Is ultimately, he knows it, and the movie knows it. But what's a more tragic story? What's more, I think, universal, is that he was a man and he had ambition. And his ambition led him to questionable action. Not that he was a bad person in his soul and his heart from the beginning. That he was he was an upstart who saw opportunity and was going to take it, and he ventured into waters that were way above his head. Whether it is going up against Lilith, the psychiatrist, whether it's going up against Grindel, the auto tycoon, who is worlds above him in ambition and danger and immorality and immoral action, and they bring him down, and he becomes lowest of lows, and that's tragedy. That's noir supposed to be tragic. This is more of a karmic, and I don't necessarily like that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? Because I mean, I guess how would you describe the arc of the character in this version? He's awful, and is made in some ways more awful by kind of a moral self-righteousness, right? Which is like, he doesn't drink. When he hears the story from Willem Dafoe about how to make someone geek, he's like, that's terrible. He does this kind of morale. He's like, which makes him even worse, right? Because there's nothing worse than a fucking moralistic asshole, right?
Yes.
That's right.
Especially a moralistic asshole who's murdered his father in probably one of the most demented ways.
Yeah, it's an insane cold blood killing.
Yeah.
Right. Who may have intentionally killed his mentor, right? But we don't know, because it's just kind of glazed over.
It's glazed over. It's not even remotely processed.
So yes, I think it's more interesting to have someone who did a bad thing, right? Like, what if you killed someone in passion, right? Okay, so it's a bad thing, but it's not like the thing where you'd say that's an evil person, right? Yeah. Like, you had a bad situation, robbery gone wrong, whatever. You can think of a million of them.
Yeah.
You did an undeniably bad thing, but it's the kind of thing where, yes, there's a big difference between having a robbery gone wrong or killing someone in a bad moment versus, like, plotting out the torturous death of your father.
Yeah.
Right? Those are in different moral universes. So you try to be better. You try to at least be morally neutral, right? You try to say, and then you justify what you do based on, like, well, I'm doing my best. I'm trying to succeed. We're stealing from a rich guy. What's bad about that? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You come up with all these justifications. You reach higher. You reach too high. You get knocked back down because... what was it? Was it a Benicio del Toro quote that was floating around? Did you see this about what noir actually is?
I don't know.
About, like, the evils of American capitalism.
I mean, that's arguably.
Yeah, but what he says is what makes noir is not, like, the style of it, but it's the idea that, like, if you reach up, you're gonna get fucking knocked down.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
That's a paraphrase, but, like, somebody sent it to me. It was right. Like, that's the point of noir.
It is.
Like, we get caught in these stylistic trappings of it, but at the end of the day, noir is about how we live in a society that won't let you succeed unless you already got it.
Yeah.
Like, we live in a society that is designed.
Trying beyond your means or your station or any of those things that limit you is perceived as futile.
Yeah, like, it's funny. My brother just clued me into this story. We'll do a little current events ending, right? This Colorado truck driver thing. Have you been following this at all?
I've not.
It hasn't made national news for whatever. Well, there may be some nefarious reasons, but, like, basically, this guy got 110 years in prison for having his brakes fail.
10 years?
I mean, 4 people died. It's very tragic.
Oh, my.
But so far as I can tell, the worst thing he allegedly did was, like, fail to pull off at one of those ramps. Like, he was coming down the mountains in Colorado.
Yeah.
His brakes fail. He tries to get them to work. They ultimately don't. He can't get them
and
to
there
work.
was an opportunity to take the
allegedly, right? I mean, but no drinking, no drugs, certainly no malice of intent, right? Tragic outcome. But the dude and now there's actually apparently a trucker strike where truckers aren't going to go to Colorado. They're like blockading the border.
Wow.
And he said that his Walmart looks like Mad Max. But the point being, like, one thing I said to him, because there's this kind of right-wing idea going around, like, oh, you can go rob a store in San Francisco, nothing will happen to you. That may or may not be true. I think that shit's overwrought. But one thing I can tell you is that you can be the CEO of that company and make millions and millions of dollars, and nobody's going to think about locking you up for running a business that maybe didn't do as good of a job with the breaks. Yeah. That's a noir story, right?
Yes.
The idea that
that's Thieves Highway, by the way. That's a good noir. That's a Jules Dawson. He was a communist.
I mean,
he ventured that.
Yeah, but like the idea that to get criminally punished on a white collar level, you basically have to do Bernie Madoff shit.
Yeah.
You don't if you're just and what the great irony of it, and that's what I said to my brother, white collar criminals actually can be deterred. Like low level drug dealers and people who do petty theft, there's no deterrent effect of criminal punishment on them. Yeah. Like, they understand the cost. But if you start locking up some suits, well, those are people who have something to lose. Yeah. They can be the whole idea of deterrence, which doesn't work on most people because of the psychological realities of being the kind of person who's considering doing crimes. Like, once you're at the point in your life where I think I might go rob my corner store, you're not living the kind of life where you feel like you have that much to lose. No. But if you have the corner office suite, you do have something to lose, which means you can be deterred, which means that occasionally we should lock one of these motherfuckers up.
It comes down to...
But that's noir, right?
Yeah, that is noir. It reminds me of... have you seen The Fisher King?
Yeah, of course.
The Tom Waits character, he goes, I'm a moral stop sign. There's some guy working in the office. His boss calls him in and says, why don't you come in here and kiss my ass? And he's like, I'm going to take these scissors and drive it right into his eyeball. And he goes, but then he thinks about me. And he thinks... Nah, I've got it all right. He's gonna pucker right up and go right back in. It reminds me of that like unfair dynamic.
Yes.
That really articulates what kind of choices you're able to make, the limitations of those choices, and that put into a dramatic, tragic structure of trying to get out of that circumstance is noir.
Yes, it's the. I mean, we talk. Yeah, we'll be Marxists. We'll talk about contradictions, but it is the double bind of the American consciousness, right? Anyone can succeed. You can succeed, but can you really succeed?
Can you really succeed? It's a question.
I mean, and so yeah, that's wherever you fall in the political spectrum. I think that one of the, and this is why I feel more ambiguous about the world we live in today than other people who. I mean, talk about living. I always tell people who, if you think this is the end times, if you think this is the worst thing you can get because we had Trump, go read about World War II. Yeah, just go read about it.
Yeah,
because you have to remember, like, Germany was one of the glowing orbs at the heart of Western civilization,
of Enlightenment,
of the Enlightenment stuff. This is a society that provided us with Immanuel Kant, that provided us, with, so many, with Goethe and all these. I mean, like, so be cognizant. I have a lot of problems with what's happening in this country and the world today, but like, be cognizant of history just a little, right? Because I think that one good thing that is emerging right now is people are hating on both sides of the political spectrum. People are hating the rich a little bit more, and whenever that happens, I get happy because I think that. I'm not saying I think it's going someplace good. When people get angry, a lot of shit can happen. That's right. True. And a lot of the things that can happen are bad things.
Some Jacobin.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can have all kinds of shitty things come from all corners.
Oh yeah.
But I do think that this generalized anger and frustration at a universe that provides all these perverse outcomes that no one can really morally justify.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot morally justify giving the truck driver 110 years and not even investigating the CEO for a criminal prosecution. Mm-hmm. Not so much as considering that they might deserve some kind of punishment. Yeah. You can't justify that. There's no moral or political framework upon which that is justifiable.
Yeah.
And everyone should be rightly made angry about it. That this poor motherfucker has to literally be a scapegoat, that we're going to lock him away and throw away the key.
Yeah.
To care. He's a sin eater for our failure as a society to have sufficient, whether you believe in culpability, tort liability, regulation, whatever, to not live in a society where that shit happens. Like, there needs to be some mechanism that would prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
And that mechanism failed, and people should be angry about that. And angry about the incentive structures that lead to that happening.
Yeah.
Right? Where, like, you can hang out this one poor bastard, right, and pay people. I'm sure people are going to get I'm sure people got money from that corporation. But whatever, that's fucking monopoly money to the people who run these things.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately probably paid out by insurance, right?
Yeah. Insurance
is what actually pays for things.
Yeah.
Like, not companies, right? They carry insurance. So, like, the fact that someone, I'm not a believer in carceral solutions generally, but, like, if we're gonna lock up people, well, the people who are responsible for that situation, really responsible for it, would be, I think, the first candidates I would point at.
Yeah.
Outside of people who do really heinous violence, right? Who have to be locked up because they just can't.
Yeah. And I think what you're articulating is very right in the genre, is that would make for a great neo-noir.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much room for that right now, because I do think that this we live in an era of sort of inchoate populist rage. Yeah. And I think that's what the noir exists to speak to. Yeah. Right? I agree. It exists to speak to this idea that, like, but through no fault of our own, we're fucked.
Yeah. There's a futility to our action. There's a futility to the mere attempt at something grander. And that resonates. That kind of story resonates. And so when you articulate that kind of real crime drama for the modern age, and then you see what Guillermo del Toro is doing, which is a crime drama, and he fails to really understand what is the futility of Stanton Carlyle. Instead, it becomes a karmic moral outcome, and I think it is a failure of articulation.
I mean, who gets at this? I guess The Wire gets at it in its own way.
Yeah, Wire's good.
I'm trying to think of things that sort of get at this feeling of, like, living in a circumstance where it just doesn't much matter what you do. Yeah. Like, you sort of, you have this possibility dangled in front of you, and you have people who are telling you should be able to succeed, but it just seems elusive to you no matter what you do. Yeah, I mean, it's clearly sort of fertile ground, but also, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the best way to get at it, because I think a lot of the way that feeling gets got at is through sort of tragedy, which is ultimately what noir is. But I think that when you reprocess that through modern aesthetics, it becomes, I don't know, it's just like another sad story about, like, a black kid dying somewhere or something. Yeah. And I mean, there's a place for that. That's a real story. Like, I just feel like we're not, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's part of why I love a movie like Moonlight so much, is it kind of, it grapples with this feeling, but it goes to a very different place ultimately with it, which I think is what's really beautiful about that movie, is that you could imagine that movie ending with, like, someone involved in the drug trade getting killed. Yeah. And that would have been kind of, the stock way that the movie went, but instead it goes in an extremely different direction. Yeah. Which is why it's so refreshing. I agree. In addition to just being made by a great filmmaker. I mean, I've taken us far afield in 50 different directions, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, it's rich for the fundamental genre is rich for a reason, but we get in the hands of, like I said, I feel like someone like Del Toro, he just needs that collaborator, right? Well, yeah, I'm not saying he doesn't have it, but I'm just saying he just someone needed to come in and say, we need to tighten this up.
Well, that's the thing.
That's the thing. This up.
The stuff you're talking about and, like, being really incisive, I don't think Del Toro is doing that. he loves the aesthetic form of cinema. That his brain operates in that, however he, dictates in storyboard, how he draws, how he imagines, how he's well versed in literary origins. He loves Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. He loves H.P. Lovecraft. He loves these things of the imagination. And so I see what he's doing with Nightmare Alley. He's giving a very fluid cinematic flourish to a story he finds interesting, and he wants to ruminate in the kind of the pageantry of the freak show and the carnival. It suits him very well visually. It suits very much the aesthetic drive of what he's at. And again, he does not fail you on this front. I just think he does not know how to venture the complexity of the human soul.
Yes,
and I think that's missing in this movie.
But even with him on his own terms, like whether these things get slotted into like his great work or his good work or his okay work, right? Like if what goes in the great slot? Pan's Labyrinth goes in the great slot.
Devil's Backbone, yeah.
Yeah. I would say Shape of Water in the great or close to very good.
Close to,
box.
yeah.
Like it's still going to be, it's still going to involve how satisfying this story is, right? At the end of the day. That's what it's about. Like how satisfying is the story on its own terms, right? Like yes, we'll forgive a lot if the thing kind of works, right? Like, and what makes it work is ineffable and hard to describe, but you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
Right? People in West Side Story, we keep on coming back to that, may behave in ways that we would think if you were presented them in some sort of vacuum, you're like, oh, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But in the movie, it does. Now, what makes it work?
Yes.
I mean, it's like how can you even get it? That's like trying to define what is beautiful, right? I mean, it's very hard, But the thing is, when the movies are not great or even not really good, sometimes we can do what we've done here, which is just we can get technical about it. Because I can tell you a lot more about why something doesn't work than what it does, and maybe that's just because we're critical assholes. But I actually think that that's a normal phenomenon.
I do think so.
Like it's much harder to say like what separates the good from the great. What makes something a sort of timeless classic versus just something that we really like. Those are harder questions they're fun to discuss, but they're harder to put your finger on. Whereas I can say point blank like if I were to sit down with the screenplay and watch the movie again, I think I could tell you scenes that could go.
Oh yeah.
I think I could just X out scenes. And I'm saying this about a filmmaker who is spectacular. I mean, Guillermo del Toro is a great filmmaker.
He is.
Like
undeniably.
There's no taking that away from him, but this movie is not going to be one of his great works.
No.
And it's, I think we could be pretty specific about why. And that's when you get into movies that are kind of a disappointment.
Yeah. And I will, and I think this will be my last point. I think what summarizes it very well is the overemphasis of his epilogue. Bradley Cooper overacts it. It's overdone. It's obvious. And comparative to Tyrone Power, who takes it like a real ironic champ. He's told, he's like, until we find another geek. And he goes, a geek? He goes, yeah, you know what that is? He goes, yeah. And he takes a drink and he says, I was born for it. Bradley Cooper maniacally laughs.
Yeah, it is. They really go. They really
ham.
They really go for it.
Yeah.
Which is funny, right? Because that's the way. I mean, I guess Del Toro is a bit of a throwback. He's going in the other direction.
Yeah.
The more understated naturalistic direction. That's not what he's not doing. That he's going. He's going ham and big. He's gonna go tight on Bradley Cooper's face as he just loses his shit.
Yeah, which it was so funny. You talked about experiencing movies with an audience, and we experienced the same audience, although we were in different areas.
Yeah,
there was a gal 2 seats away from me. Her mind was blown by this ending. She was like, "Oh my god," and she was laughing in a weird way because I don't think it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be dark and tragic, and she erupted in applause. She was the first one to applaud in our cinema, and it was just fascinating to watch because, one, I think it's telegraphed pretty obviously. Two, I think it is overdone at the end, and 3 that if you are surprised by this ending, you don't either watch enough noir. And ultimately, I think you're surprised because you like the kind of romantic, idyllic qualities that define Del Toro. Like, he is more fascinated in something that is more positive than negative. And so I think tackling something of such dour qualities actually underservices his abilities. And I hope he sticks to something a little more up his alley next time.
Up his nightmare alley.
His nightmare alley. No, so that's all I have to say,
I mean,
really.
it's not surprising, but it's also not satisfying, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
yes, it's not.
Like, that's why, I mean, for me, like, when it turns out that, you know, Cate Blanchett, the psychiatrist, is just fucked him over.
That's obvious from the get-go.
But also that's a scene that, like, should... Like, it's not surprising and it's not satisfying. Like, you don't feel like she should be doing... Like, what did he do to you that made you want to do this? Yeah. I know I said this before, but it's just... If it's not surprising, it's not satisfying, I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not... It's like, okay.
Yeah. That's ultimately the feeling. It becomes a little empty. That's unfortunate.
Yeah,
because
no.
I think he is a promising, not promising. He's
watch what this guy does.
He has
watch the space.
We'll watch what he does. No, he is a proven great filmmaker, and this just is a mediocre aspect of his strength.
I always wonder about movies like where it's like I said, basically every director who works long enough eventually makes some movies that aren't that great.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I mean, it's just the way it is.
It's what. Happened to all sorts of great filmmakers. Robert Aldrich being one of them. He made so many good movies, and then all of a sudden he was making not very good movies.
Whose output is huge and uniformly great? I'm trying to think.
It's hard.
I mean, I'd have to debate this. I'd have to think about this because you can certainly talk about people who fell off dramatically.
Yeah.
You know, your Coppolas, your Burtons, your...
dramatically.
You can talk about people who are like we've talked about Ridley Scott, who's had kind of made some iconic movies early and then has had a kind of uneven output.
Yeah.
You can talk about your Spielbergs, who've had mostly really good output, but definitely some ups and downs.
Waver here and there, yeah.
You can talk about people... I mean... Sometimes it's interesting when people, you get like a Paul Schrader, like late career Renaissance kind of first reform type movie.
Yeah, he's interesting.
Schrader's a good. I mean, has he made a truly bad movie? I don't know, but he's not having.
I don't think he's written that bad of a movie.
He hasn't had like a huge output.
That's true.
I mean,
his movies are very interesting, directing or screen.
It's funny because we've talked about Mills and we've talked about Sean Baker. It's like I'm sort of. Or Barry Jenkins, for that matter. It's like, oh, is the bad one coming?
Who knows?
Because
I'll allow it.
Well, yeah, but I hope that the directors I love get the chance to make a bad movie and then come back.
They keep going. Yeah.
I guess maybe Ava DuVernay got that out of the way with that. What's the big budget movie she made that people hated? It was based on
Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah,
awful. It was dreadful.
I didn't see it, but
so bad.
Get it out of the way. Get it out of the way early. Just rip off the Band-Aid.
I'm not that big of an Ava DuVernay fan.
I think she's a good filmmaker.
She's fine.
I mean, but I don't know that I think she's, I don't know.
She's no Barry Jenkins. I'll tell you that.
Or what about? Yeah, I'm trying to think of other.
She's
people.
no Jane Campion.
Steve Madden. I worry about that guy. When is he gonna make a bad movie?
Yeah.
Although I liked Widows more than you. Jane Campion. Has she made a bad? I mean,
I like Widows. But you probably liked it more than me. But Steve McQueen's excellent filmmaker.
Agnes Varda. Did she ever make a bad movie?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
some people might disagree, but I would say yes.
Yeah. I mean, I just think you reach a critical mass where you're going to make a bad one, or at least one that's not like to your standard.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's fine. Like, it's just, but I do wonder, right? I wonder about I think it'd be interesting if. I don't know who could do this, right? Maybe someone with the confidence and the success of Spielberg. I would be really interested to hear them really do a long form reflection on when it goes wrong for them, how and why.
Yeah.
Because that to me is interesting because it's it really is a when genius failed type story, right? Yeah. When great people come together and make something that's shitty. That's very interesting to me because I wonder about Like, I understand the dynamics on one level. There's a lot of money involved, and if you don't know that it's not going to work until the middle, you just got to kind of finish it.
You just got to go.
You got to land the plane, right? Like, we got to get this thing done. We got to put it into the world, let it make back some money or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I understand the market dynamic, and I understand that impulse to be like, this shit, we just got to get it in the can and move on.
Yeah. You just, you're working
but like, I am legitimately interested in the When Genius Failed story. Like, what happens when great people come together and make some trash?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or some shit that's even just mediocre. Like,
that would be interesting. Like, an interesting study.
Like when you're undeniably great, what is the thing that, you know, means, like, you put out Jaws, you put out Close Encounters, and then you put out some other shit that's bad, or you put out a thing that's not as good. Like what was the difference?
Yeah.
You know, what was the difference between when you were able to make the great thing and when the thing kind of fell flat?
That's true. Yeah, that would be an interesting.
Especially study. if it's in your control. If it's not in your control, if it's a sort of David Lynch Dune situation, then we know what the explanations are.
We do.
But when it's in your control, like, I don't think like a suit came in and fucked up this movie.
No,
you know,
not at all. This is purely him.
Because, like I said, it's bloated. I mean, the suits come in and they cut, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
This is bloated. Yeah. So I don't think that's the story. So then the question is, like, what happened? I don't know. I just find that shit fascinating.
No, it is fascinating.
Well, that's good. We did a good job.
Yeah. Spider-Man, No Way Home, and Nightmare Alley.
Maybe see these movies if you want. If you got, you know, if you got time.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you have to.
So I think what's on the agenda, I don't know. I think we're looking to next week maybe do King's Man and Matrix Resurrections. I think
we also have to talk about the daughter movie.
Lost Daughter. I mean,
there's
that. Some other options.
There's a bunch of little movies floating around, but I feel like Lost Daughter is the one that's getting the most love.
I'll be seeing that tomorrow, so we'll make time. We'll make time for it. I've got a lot of time this week, I think, to make up for. And then I'm seeing Tragedy in Macbeth right now on Christmas Day, and I thought maybe we would talk about that. By the way, hour 45.
Fucking William Shakespeare.
An hour 45.
William Shakespeare, Joel Cohen.
I'm so excited just for the runtime.
Fucking Denzel. that shit's gonna be good. Yeah. That shit's gonna cook.
It looks very promising. So we've got some conversations coming your way this next week, and then we'll take a little break at the first little week of January, and then we'll return and maybe play some catch up on some movies we haven't discussed. Have
a little chicanery around the end of the year. We might do a little end of the year chicanery fun.
Chicanery, yeah.
The Oscars will be around the corner.
We can talk about that.
We're gonna have to do some Oscar related stuff.
So it'll be good. Yeah. Well, Ben Thelen, Dead Reckoner podcast. Kyle Bruehl, I Know Movies and You Don't. Check those shows out. But otherwise, we'll see you next time.
Right on.